Chapter 71. Star, The Shadow, 2, you are listening at novelfull.audio. After Chang, Sun and Baek Jio.O finished eating dinner, they went to bed earlier than usual. Perhaps because they had gone through tough battles in the training institute, they felt more fatigued than they expected after getting a chance to relax. Chang, Sun was actually happy to be sleeping in a comfortable bed after such a long time. Even the fiend, divine Twilight, needed to take breaks and recharge himself, but somehow he could not sleep. He would be able to force himself to sleep if he used his magic, but he did not want to. Judging from how he could hear Jio.O toss and turn in the mattress beside his bed, it seemed the other man was in a similar state. Are you having trouble sleeping? Chang, Sun asked with his eyes closed. Huh. Yeah, a little bit, Jio.O replied as he stopped moving. Tell me if the mattress is uncomfortable, Chang, Sun told Jio.O, just in case. No, not at all. It's comfortable. The floor is warm, and the comforter is really soft, Jio.O fervently explained, not wanting Chang, Sun to misunderstand. When he heard Chang, Sun quietly chuckling, he breathed a sigh of relief. Then why can't you sleep? Chang, Sun continued. I'm not sure, Jio.O replied, fidgeting with the comforter. It seems you have a lot on your mind, Chang, Sun said. Did you notice? Jio.O slowly answered. I would be an idiot if I didn't, Chang, Sun said concisely, making Jio.O smile bitterly. Jio.O had not wanted Chang, Sun to worry, so he had been careful not to reveal anything. Still, it seemed he could not fool Chang. Sun's eyes. In truth, however, Jio.O had only been fooling himself, because it would have been far stranger for anyone not to notice. Before eating dinner, Jio.O had been incredibly happy just to be able to play games, but after the meal, he had begun staring into the air and sighing occasionally, not even touching a game controller. What's wrong? Chang, Sun asked, opening his eyes. It's not as if something is actually wrong, Jio.O replied sincerely. Then. Chang, Sun continued. For a moment, Jio.O wondered how to answer Chang. Sunday. No matter how he answered, however, Chang, Sun would notice if he replied dishonestly, so he decided to come clean. It's just, Bedodem, just. Chang, Sun repeated. I'm not sure whether I can be this comfortable, Jio.O trailed off. Although he had not lived for a long time, he had had nothing but lonely memories, so he could not help but wonder whether he was truly allowed to enjoy everything he was experiencing. He was happy, but that made him nervous that the happiness would merely be temporary. He was relieved that he had cured his half-spirit curse, bonded with Chang, Sun, and gotten a warm place to sleep in, but he felt that he did not deserve it. That was why Jio.O could not help but feel anxious. Perhaps he was dreaming right now, and in reality, he had been captured by a monster and placed in an illusion. If he escaped the monster's illusion, everything he was experiencing right now would disappear into thin air. Or, perhaps, he would soon have to think of the present as one of the pointless fantasies he had once had. However, who decides that? Chang, Sun suddenly asked. Well, Jio.O stuttered. No one else can decide if you're allowed to do so. You decide that, Chang, Sun said calmly. I decide, Jio.O subconsciously repeated after Chang, Sun, the words, you decide, echoing around his ears. Cherish yourself more. You decide your own value. If you consider yourself pathetic, you'll be as valuable as trash on the ground, but if you appreciate yourself, you'll be more valuable, Chang, Sun continued. Jio.O remained silent. So, you choose whether or not you deserve to have everything, Chang, Sun said. Chang, Sun could see his old self in Jio. Who was silently pondering the situation. When he ended up in Arcadia without anything, he had only been obsessed with fighting and not realized how valuable he was. No, even after he became a celestial, he had failed to realize that. Without thinking much, he had only kept walking the path he had been given. However, he had ended up losing everything and falling into the abyss, enabling him to start realizing how wrong he had been. He had never allowed himself to take a break, cherish anything, or reflect on himself, thus, he had remained incredibly full of himself, just running amok like a daredevil. If he had relaxed or introspected a little more, Chang's son would not necessarily have fallen like that. His old colleagues would not have left him, and the fight against those damned zodiacs could have turned out differently. He had become aware of that only after he regressed and spent a month with his family. Thus, Chang's son did not want Jiao.ul to follow in his footsteps. Before curing Jiao.ul's half-spirit curse or fighting the Jigwis, the Jiao.ul he met had resembled his past self. There had been nothing but spite and regret inside Jiao.ul, so it was not hard to imagine how he would end up. That was why he wanted Jiao.ul to realize that early and learn to appreciate himself. Xerxes, as his father, you should be the one to talk about this kind of stuff. Where are you? And what in the world are you doing? Chang's son called for his colleague in his thoughts, but received no answer. Jiao.ul said nothing for a long time, but soon, Chang's son heard faint sniffles filling the quiet room, so he pretended not to hear anything. Thank you, Jiao.ul said, his quiet voice faintly filling the room. The Celestial, a good season to hunt sniffles, wiping her nose with tissues. The Celestial, Twilight, piercing owl, benevolently watches you. The first night after they had cleared the Black Blood Mountain Range wore on. ****** The next morning, Li Ha. Xian tugged on Soyu.Ha's sleeves, glancing at Chang's room, from which Chang's son and Jiao.ul had not emerged yet. She began, Mom. What? Yu.Ha asked as she trimmed bean sprouts. Isn't it strange? Ha, Xian asked. Yu.Ha curtly asked, what are you trying to say again? Sensing how uninterested Yu.Ha was, Xian pouted as she grumbled, you must think I'm only going to say weird stuff. Then are you not? Yu.Ha replied with a chuckle. I'm not. Anyway, listen, Xian said, straightening her back. Yeah. What? Yu.Ha asked as she continued to trim the bean sprouts. You know, our scoundrel, Xian began. Why must you always call your brother? Yu.Ha interrupted. Don't cut in on me and listen first. Don't you think our scoundrel is weird? Xian asked, looking at Chang's door. Yu.Ha stopped trimming the bean sprouts, but Xian did not notice because her eyes were still fixed on the door. Yu.Ha quietly asked, what are you talking about? Well, you know, he became a completely different person after he was entangled in the Jamsil gate. He stopped drinking, and he stopped throwing tantrums. I tried to irritate him on purpose last time, but he just ignored me and left. Hey, Xian busily explained. How can you say those things proudly as his older sister? Yu.Ha replied, clicking her tongue. Anyway, he's weird. He became totally different. No, he's still cocky, but it's almost as if he became really old overnight. He talks less, is more mature, and even has a talent that he didn't have before. Right. Xian continued, becoming more and more certain as she went on. In truth, Chang's family had almost given up on him. It was understandable because, unlike his elite siblings, Chang's son had been crazy about games, causing conflicts with his father. After Chang's son retired, he had even become an alcoholic and made even his mother worry. While he was in the Jamsil dungeon, his family had almost fallen apart, but after Chang's son returned, he had acted as if nothing had happened without making any apologies, angering Xian. As time passed, however, Chang's son had begun to lead a different life. Although he was still unfriendly to his family, he tried to show he had changed. He had quit drinking cold turkey, which had previously been the biggest problem for Chang's family, and lived a regular life, never missing dinner with his family. Due to those changes, the family could meet Chang-sun more often. Naturally, Chang-sun's father, who had all but given up and always been discontent with him, slowly became less angry. On top of that, Chang-sun had become a world-class genius. Thus, even Ha-Xian, who had never been familiar with players, had begun to hear and see the word tyrant non-stop. As such, it was not unusual for Ha-Xian to talk about Chang-sun this way. And why are there so many people wanting me to introduce them to him? Ugh, everyone should get their eyes checked. Why do they like him so much? Ha-Xian grumbled inwardly. Looking at her daughter, Yu.Ha wondered how to answer for a moment, feeling mixed emotions and silently working through her inner conflict. The strangest part is, Ha-Xian continued seriously. Because she was worried about where her daughter was going with this, Yu.Ha looked at Ha-Xian nervously. He made a friend, Ha-Xian concluded, still just as serious. Yu.Ha silently tilted her head. You don't know, Mom. He's had 0 friends ever since he was a child. Ouch. Ha-Xian shrieked as Yu.Ha slapped her back. That's no way to talk about your brother, Yu.Ha snapped, scowling at Ha-Xian. Ouch, ouch. Mom. It hurts. Stop hitting me. Ha-Xian shouted. Yu.Ha slapped Ha-Xian's back non-stop, although Ha-Xian tried to dodge her, she never missed. Stop. Stop. Hold on, Mom. Mom, let me say just one more thing. I have to tell you something really important. Ha-Xian exclaimed, attempting to cover her back with her hands. Are you just going to say more useless stuff now? Yu.Ha asked, although she briefly stopped. No, I'm not. Ha-Xian exclaimed, holding out her hand to put some distance between her and Yu.Ha. Yu.Ha's gaze turned sharp, ready to resume slapping Ha-Xian's back any minute. His friend's looks and physique are totally my type, so can you ask if he has a girlfriend later? He hangs out with that arrogant Chang-sun, so he'll be really gentle. Ouch! Ha-Xian yelled. While Ha-Xian was being scolded, by Yu.Ha, Chang-sun suddenly opened the door. As if they were about to go somewhere, Chang-sun and Jiao.O were all dressed up. However, as the clothes Jiao.O had worn the previous day were in the laundry machine, he was wearing Chang-sun's biggest sweatsuit. Of course, the clothes were still so short for Jiao.O that he was practically wearing capri pants. Are you heading out? Yu.Ha asked, standing up. Jiao.O politely bowed to Yu.Ha and Ha-Xian, saying, I hope you had a good rest. Watching from far away, Ha-Xian grinned as she thought, look at him. I can see that he's gentle in one glance. We're going out to train. We'll eat outside, so go ahead and eat, Chang-sun answered. Don't overwork yourself, Yu.Ha said, smiling faintly. Yeah, I won't, so don't worry. I'll head out then, Chang-sun said, opening the front door. Before following Chang-sun, Jiao.O hurriedly said his farewells to Yu.Ha and Ha-Xian. I'll head out too. Full of worry, Yu.Ha lightly sighed. She had heard that players' parents tended to have short lifespans because they were always worried and anxious about their children, and she could now see why they were concerned. She just desperately hoped that nothing would happen. ******, please go to Xiangsu.dong, Chang-sun told the taxi driver. The taxi Chang-sun had reserved left Jamsil. Inside the taxi, Jiao.O somehow looked very peaceful, and it was all due to Chang-sun's advice. After the previous night, he had organized his thoughts and changed his mindset. Where are we going? Jiao.O asked, tilting his head. He was unable to tell where they were going. As far as he knew, there was no player training facility in Xiangsu.dong. If they were going to train, they had to either go to Gangnam or areas on the outskirts of Seoul, such as Hanam. To change weapons, Chang, Sun explained simply. Weapons. Jiao.O repeated, his eyes widening a bit. His weapon was currently in the inventory, and as he had spent a fortune on his weapon, he had not planned on changing or repairing it. Well, are you going to keep using that dull spear? Chang, Sun asked, looking outside the window. But I don't have money, Jiao.O trailed off, falling silent as he was suddenly forced to think about reality. Although he had received some rewards by clearing the dungeon and gotten his salary a couple of days prior, the seller would set the prices of weapons and defensive equipment. However, Chang, Sun dismissed Jiao.O's concerns immediately, replying, "Did you already forget what I said? You set your own value." Jiao.O stayed quiet. A weapon is important for protecting yourself and killing monsters, and it's especially important because your combat power will be halved if you aren't comfortable with your weapon, Chang, Sun continued coldly. That doesn't just apply to weapons. It applies to everything, including defensive equipment, talismans, and jewels. Jiao.O recalled the weapons Chang, Sun had used in the Black Blood Mountain range. He had used a unique-looking spear and whip, as well as special daggers. Of course, his physical ability was exceptional, and every weapon he had was high quality. In contrast, Jiao.O had an ordinary spear I got from an ordinary forge. Jiao.O thought bitterly. The spear was not bad, but it had become dull just as Chang, Sun said. Thus, even if Jiao.O repaired it somehow, it would grow dull again as he fought through harsh environments. So, don't say anything and just follow me, because I'm going to pay for your weapon. Get ready, because I'll test your skills afterward, Chang, Sun said. He closed his eyes, leaning against the seat. Chang.Sun's weapon handling skill was certainly splendid. What would it be like to learn from him one-on-one? Jiao.O lightly gaped without realizing it. Although Chang.Sun's lesson would be difficult, it would be the second turning point in his life, the first being the moment when his half-spirit curse had been undone. He's been part of both of my turning points, Jiao.O thought, looking at Chang, Sun with shining eyes. Chapter 72. Star, The Shadow, 3, you are listening at novelfull.audio. After Chang, Sun and Beck Jiao.O exited the taxi, Jiao.O tilted his head as he looked around the tailored shoe alley in Xiangsu.Dong. He muttered, this place is, Jiao.O had also visited the same place to get his current spear, but he had only met blacksmiths who tried to rip him off. Thus, he was unsure whether there were any proper blacksmiths in the alley. However, Chang, Sun went deep inside the alley without an explanation. Worried about losing sight of Chang, Sun, Jiao.O quickly followed him. What the hell? You want me to make you another weapon? Do you think I'm a magic wand you can just wave in the air to create weapons? Weapons can't be forged that easily and quickly. Choi Bu, Yong exclaimed, furious at Chang, Sun for making yet another absurd request after visiting for the first time in a long time. Li Chang, Sun has deposited 100 million won into your bank account. It's a deposit. I'll pay you the same amount once you're done, Chang, Sun calmly offered. Still, it doesn't work like. Bu, Yong yelled. Li Chang, Sun has deposited 100 million won into your bank account. Are you still not going to do it? Chang, Sun asked. Fuck, Bu, Yong cursed. He gave up, realizing how futile resistance was in the face of Chang.Sun's shameless calm. The crazy bastard was throwing money in the air again. Although he was supposed to be happy that he could practically bathe in money, he could not help but be annoyed that he would have to pull an all-nighter for several days once again. What on earth? Jiao.O blinked blankly as he listened to Chang, Sun and Bu.Yong's conversation. Every part of their conversation sounded surreal. What had Bu.Yong's smartphone just said? Chang, Sun had sent 100 million won twice. Unable to believe his ears, Jio.O's jaw dropped as he heard about an amount of money he could not even imagine having. Who is this person? Jio.O wondered. When he first met Bu Yong, he had thought the man did not look reliable, because he looked more like a tattooist than a blacksmith. Not only was his body covered with various tattoos, there were also many earrings on his ear. Jio.O tried not to stereotype people, but it was difficult to think that a person who looked like Bu Yong could have the mindset of a great artisan. On top of that, Bu Yong was blind, and he constantly held the leash of his seeing that eye dog, which only made Jio.O's doubts grow stronger. Regardless, it seemed Chang Sun did not care, simply silencing Bu Yong's protests by showering him with money. Jio.O had once heard the word flex, and the current moment seemed to be a perfect example of that word. It's so cool. Jio.O thought, setting the problem of whether or not he could trust Bu Yong aside. It had been Jio.O's lifelong dream to be able to throw money around at least once, so once again, he was amazed by Chang Sunday. It was difficult to tell whether Chang Sun was aware of Jio.O's thoughts, however. Phew. Bu Yong heaved a long sigh and slowly raised his head. Tidying up his disheveled hair, he cursed in annoyance, "Fucking bastard. I told you to call me CEO, Chang Sun replied, unfazed. Yeah, Mr. fucking CEO, so what do you want me to make again? Bu Yong retorted before getting down to business. Spear, Chang Sun said. If you're telling me to make another spear like your weird-ass spear, I'll crack your skull first before I melt any iron, Bu Yong growled. You don't have to make the same kind of spear again. An ordinary long spear will be enough, Chang Sun assured Bu Yong. Weight and length? Bu Yong asked, implicitly agreeing to make Jio.O's spear. Noticing his response, Chang Sun looked at Jio.O. Jio.O was still unsure whether he could trust Bu Yong, but believed there had to be a reason for Chang Sun to have brought him here. Thus, he readily answered, a 3-meter long spear will be enough for me, and as for the weight, how am I supposed to know if you explain it like that? Do you not have anything I can refer to? Bu Yong interrupted crudely, thinking Jio.O would be the same as Chang Sunday. However, Jio.O pulled out his spear from his inventory and gave it to Bu Yong without any complaint. Why is it so heavy? Bu Yong grumbled, frowning for a moment as he felt the heavy spear resting in his hands. Soon, however, his expression faded as he slowly examined the spear with his fingertips, trying to figure out the length, weight, and shape of the spearhead. As he could not see, he drew a perfect image of the spear in his mind by touch. Bu Yong looked so serious that Jio.O felt he had to change his initial assessment. It seemed almost as if Bu Yong were the only person in the world. Jio.O held his breath, inadvertently thinking it would be bad to distract Bu Yong from concentrating. Give me your hand, Bu Yong said, holding out his hand. Jio.O put his hand on top of Bu Yong's without realizing it. Just as he had done with Jio.O's long spear, Bu Yong inspected Jio.O's right hand very thoroughly, then asked for his left hand afterward. When he was done with Jio.O's hands, he measured Jio.O's wrists, forearms, shoulders, and overall height. You're a lefty, and you thrust your spear rather than swinging it. No, you thrust and spin to maximize your attack's damage by adding centrifugal and rotational force. You use a footwork technique, so you aren't slow. You use this kind of heavy weapon, but you make sure you aren't slow, Bu Yong remarked. Jio.O's eyes reflexively widened as he listened to Bu Yong muttering to himself. It seemed that Bu Yong had not only created the image of the spear and identified the owner, but also figured out the owner's habits and fighting style in detail, deepening Jio.O's surprise even further. Due to his lack of money, he had not met many blacksmiths, but no one had examined the person who was going to use the weapon fully like Bu Yong. They were too busy showing off. Jiao.O recalled. Blacksmiths, craftsmen, enchanters. Most of the so-called master craftsmen or artists, those who were usually categorized as production workers, were always full of themselves. They were so antisocial and narcissistic that they simply ordered players to get used to their creations, as they were masterpieces. However, from Jiao.O's perspective, every one of them was just an asshole waiting for an innocent, naive, and rich simpleton to step into their shops. Although there were proper craftsmen in the White Tiger clan, they were arrogant too. Naturally, Jiao.O had not expected Bu Yong to be any different. In contrast, Bu Yong seemed to know what the weapons he created were supposed to be like. A weapon that suited the owner was a real weapon. Well, I guess that's why he could create Chang Sun Hyung's weapons, Jiao.O thought with a shrug. He began to understand how Chang Sun's weapons, the nameless spear and the whip, had such complicated exteriors and structures, as well as such splendid abilities. He thought there was no way such a master craftsman would create defective products. When he was done analyzing Jiao.O, Bu Yong sat on his chair and reviewed all the information he had received, crossing his arms. Wilson, Bu Yong seeing that I dogged, yawned for a while and fell asleep near Bu Yong's feet. Only after a long time did Bu Yong turn to look at Chang Sunday. Even though he was blind, he had accurately pinpointed Chang Sun's direction. He asked, "What kind of material do you want me to use?" "It should be at least black raven iron, or hundredfold refined steel. Grade, cold iron," Chang Sun thought, stroking his chin. "What the fuck? Are you going to wage a war or something?" Bu Yong asked, his jaw dropping. "Something like that," Chang Sun said with a nod. Bu Yong shook his head in disbelief. Black raven iron, and cold iron, were both very difficult materials to obtain, but Chang Sun wanted Bu Yong to use them to create a very heavy weapon. If the word crazy could not be used for such a moment, when would it be used? 15 days, Bu Yong said, telling Chang Sun and Jiao.O the amount of time he needed to make the spear. 10 days, Chang Sun said, shaking his head. "Are you nuts? The shortest amount of time I need to order materials and make ingots is 15 days. My arms will break if I pound ingots for a week non-stop." Bu Yong yelled at the top of his lungs. "They won't," Chang Sun said calmly. "Fuck, you should at least give me 15 days no matter what," Bu Yong grumbled, scratching his head in frustration. "Deal," Chang Sun suddenly said with a nod. "Why couldn't you just say yes from the start?" Bu Yong grumbled, but he lightly stretched his hands. He had been getting bored from only making Chang Sun's weapons, so he would be less bored if he made weapons for other people too. I'm going to have my own weapon, Jiao.O thought as he looked down at his hands, unable to calm the butterflies in his stomach. He was incredibly happy to be able to hold a proper infantry weapon in his callus-covered hands. As a martial artist, he was bound to be happy to own a splendid weapon. However, Jiao.O was more so glad to have a weapon forged by the blacksmith who had created Chang Sun's own. Following the footsteps of his idol brought him happiness. "What are you thinking so hard about?" Chang Sun asked, bringing Jiao.O back to reality. As Chang Sun lowered the nameless spear, he stared at Jiao.O. That was when Jiao.O finally remembered where he was and held his breath. Now isn't the time to be distracted. Jiao.O thought nervously. After they finished with their business in Xiangsu Dong, they traveled to the nearest player practice range right away. Although a crowd of people who recognized Chang Sun swarmed toward Chang Sun and Jiao.O, the practice range owner immediately gave them a room for VIPs when Chang Sun asked for it, so they could begin practicing in peace. Unless they were living on the outskirts, players living in big cities like Seoul usually lacked places to train. To aid those players, the council had set up gymnasiums that players could use. However, Players sometimes used private practice ranges too, where they could practice in separate rooms. In those practice ranges, the rooms were decorated to resemble dungeons using magic devices. The Celestial, a good season to hunt, watches the spar between two warriors with great interest. The Celestial, Twilight, piercing owl, is ironing out the details of her reward for you. The Celestial, Calamity Tiger, briefly stops paying attention because bloody fights are no fun. Pablesag and Minerva devoted their attention to the spar, but on the other hand, Hyoju looked away. Well, you're in for a big surprise, Sun thought, smiling enigmatically at Hyoju as he looked at Jio.O. Jio.O shook his head nervously and replied, It's nothing. I'm just nervous, don't be too nervous, or else you won't be able to train properly, Sun instructed. Okay, Hyung. Jio.O replied with a fervent nod. By the way, how well are you able to use your ghost energy? Sun asked, changing the topic. Well, Jio.O said hesitantly, unable to answer properly. Sun chuckled quietly, asking, I'm guessing you have a problem. Yes, that's right, Jio.O said. He lowered his head slightly, feeling ashamed. In truth, Jio.O had failed to show significant progress after Sun undid his half-spirit curse. An immense amount of magic circulated in every part of his body, and that magic was different enough from the norm to be called ghost energy or divine energy. Unlike his half-spirit curse, the magic gave him a vast amount of life force. However, the problem was that his progress ended there. The magic did not budge, let alone obey Jio.O's will. He could only occasionally use it in times of need, but other than those moments, the magic only circulated through the paths in Jio.O's body like a vast, arrogant river, practically driving him mad. He was able to feel the vigorous flow of energy, but he could not use it at all. Of course you would, Sun said as if he had expected it. Jio.O's eyes widened in shock. He asked, do you know why? The celestial world encircling serpent tilts his head, wondering what you, the snake, are trying to do again. Sun nodded, saying, you should never try to use your magic like ordinary magic. Please explain in detail, Jio.O requested. Sun continued, a half-spirit refers to a person who was conceived while a shaman and a ghost had intercourse, right? They're also called half-monsters, which suggests they also have monster energy or evil energy. However, the problem is that you've completely undone the half-spirit curse, so wouldn't it be weirder for you to be able to control the energy? Then, what should I do? Jio.O asked. You should use a different magic circulation method than the original one you used. Of course, you'll have to change your every little habit, down to your breathing method, Sun said, thinking of Xerxes throughout his explanation. Right now, Jio.O has shadow energy. So, I should not only help him master the energy, but also help him manifest a talent or trait. In order to do so, there can be no better method than helping him be like his father. Sun thought. Sun had thought of the cultivation method Xerxes had explained to him at some point in the past, as a means to help Jio.O properly obtain the special skill, shadow secret technique. It would be impossible to obtain unless a person had a unique kind of energy known as shadow energy. If that were to happen, Jio.O would obtain the trait, shadow play. Above all, Jio.O needed shadow, Xerxes' foundation, in order to control his shadow energy. So, Sun said, lightly gripping the nameless spear and pointing it at Jio.O. You should become my shadow from now on. Chapter 73. Star, the Shadow, 4, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Beck Jio.O tilted his head in confusion, unable to understand what Sun meant by shadow. Looking back at him, Sun chuckled lightly. It was understandable that Jio.O could not understand, as Sun had heard the phrase, become a shadow from his father, Xerxes. Shadow. What are you talking about? You know I normally don't have a fixed physical body, right? Yeah, or else you wouldn't look like that now. Just as you said, I normally can't even manifest in a spirit body, because you could say I'm a false deity. No matter how exceptional a celestial is, they normally don't recognize me, but you're different. So, in order to have a body, I extracted your shadow, then artificially made a shell and inhabited it. If it weren't for your shadow, no, the hidden side of your imprint, to be more accurate, it would have been difficult to manifest like this in the physical world. That means you're parasitizing me, am I right? I don't like the way you put it, but yeah, something like that. As it happened, Chang's son had not intentionally encountered Xerxes. While exploring some ruins, Chang's son had coincidentally sensed him and realized he was a being who had been expelled from the planes and the universe, like the. Thus, Chang's son had lent Xerxes his shadow as a medium for Xerxes to show himself in the physical plane. Through that incident, Xerxes had become Chang's son's shadow, an ally who protected and assisted Chang's son, and a colleague with whom he had accomplished many achievements together. Although they had gone down separate paths due to a difference in opinion, there were no hard feelings between them. In truth, Chang's son had long felt indebted to Xerxes after having lost his precious colleague through his ignorance and selfishness. Now, he had met that very same precious colleague's son. As Jio.O had undone his old curse and regained his original looks and talents, Chang's son would now guide Jio.O down the path he had to walk. Of course, Jio.O would have been able to find his own path someday with his own willpower and talent, but it would still take a tremendous amount of time. Thus, Chang's son would shorten the time it took and guide Jio.O, in order to ensure he did not go down the wrong path. The celestial world encircling serpent says he is unsure what you are trying to teach that person. The celestial world encircling serpent looks forward to seeing your new knowledge, believing you know what you are doing. However, Jio.O was still perplexed, as he did not know the full story. Perhaps due to his deep trust for Chang's son, however, he did not doubt Chang's son's instruction. He asked, then, what should I do? First, you must learn to control your shadow energy, Chang's son said. Shadow energy, Jio.O quietly repeated. You can't force shadow energy to move. You have to build a pathway for it, so it can flow naturally, Chang's son continued. A pathway? Jio.O asked. A path for your shadow energy to flow through. Project your energy onto my shadow first, Chang's son said, pointing at his shadow. Nav om. Jio.O tilted his head. Do you see my shadow on the ground? Try pulling it in your direction, Chang's son explained further. Jio.O had been looking at Chang's son's face, but he then lowered his head to look at Chang's son's feet. Just like Chang's son, a spot of shadow cast by the light stood still where he was looking. Thus, just as Chang's son instructed, Jio.O tried to pull Chang's son's shadow toward him. However, the shadow did not budge, and Jio.O's magic still continued to flow like an arrogant river. Don't pull it forcefully. Untangle the shadow strand by strand, and slowly pull it toward you, Chang's son instructed firmly. After managing to calm down with some difficulty, Jio.O patiently focused his attention on Chang's son's shadow. Instead of pulling the entire shadow at once this time, he tried to untangle the head of the shadow and attempted to pull it toward him. Jio.O realized. Amazingly, the shadow's head disintegrated little by little. It was very slow, but Jio.O successfully separated a strand from Chang's son's shadow. It was such an amazing sight that Jio.O's eyes widened inadvertently. Focus. You shouldn't get distracted. Chang's son yelled. Jio.O nodded and concentrated on the shadow again. Then, the strand that was about to be sucked back into Chang's son's shadow rose again, and crawled on the ground toward Jio.O's own shadow. As soon as it met Jio.O's shadow, his magic, which had not budged until then, moved simultaneously. However, the magic still refused to move according to Jio.O's will. Instead, it began to move in a different way from before, as naturally as if magic, was supposed to move that way. It moved downward to Jio.O's feet and gradually seeped into his shadow. Pzzz. Pa. The more magic flowed into his shadow, the faster Jio.O's shadow pulled on Chang.Sun's own. It started out agonizingly slow, but became noticeably faster after some time. At first, Jio.O separated Chang.Sun's shadow strand by strand, but later, one strand became 2, and then 3. In the end, Chang.Sun's entire shadow disintegrated as if Jio.O had untangled a ball of yarn at once, mixing into Jio.O's shadow. However, as Jio.O pulled the last piece of Chang.Sun's shadow toward him, badump, his heart began to race so wildly that he felt as if he were suffocating. Don't get overwhelmed by my shadow. Suppress it using any means necessary. Chang.Sun shouted firmly. Badump. Badump. Jio.O's heart began beating more quickly, and he could only faintly hear Chang.Sun shout, as if it came from far away. A shiver ran down his spine, and he clenched his teeth in an attempt to withstand it. His magic quickly seeped into the shadow, where Chang.Sun and Jio.O's shadows clashed for control. Jio.O infused a vast amount of magic, but there was no sign of Chang.Sun's shadow calming down anytime soon. A shadow has mixed with another shadow. Shadow energy is being infused. The shadow energy has been infused. The foundation of your existence is in disorder. The moment those incomprehensible messages began incessantly popping up. It's tiring. I don't like it. In his mind, Jio.O could hear a new voice grumbling from within his body. He realized that the voice was the shadow he had seen in his unconscious world while undoing his half-spirit curse. The shadow had reached out a hand and coaxed Jio.O to follow it. He had believed it disappeared after his half-spirit curse was completely cured, but it seemed he had been wrong, as the residue of the shadow remained either in his magic or in his shadow. Why in the world did you catch this kind of shadow from the beginning? I have no other choice but to help, the shadow muttered to itself, but Jio.O could not understand what it was talking about. The shadows have merged into one. Successfully gained control of the shadow. The shadows that had been merging chaotically as if they were about to explode gradually calmed down and took form. The shadow spoke in Jio.O's mind again, giving him a message that could be considered advice. You'd better do well. Seeing as you didn't follow me, you have to endure all the hardships and suffering you'll come across in the future. Whoosh. The shadow took the form of a human again and suddenly merged itself with Jio.O, starting from his leg. The flow of magic that had been sucked into the shadow withdrew little by little, moving according to Jio.O's will for the first time. The magic flowed not only into Jio.O's legs, but also to his fingertips through his entire upper body, forearms, elbows, and wrists. Jio.O tensed up as the shadow covered Jio.O's entire body as if it were armor. When it was done covering his body, Jio.O was no longer there. A humanoid shadow rose from Chang.Sun's shadow on the ground, not from Jio.O's own. Ding! The skill, Shadow Doll Creation, has been created. Analyzing the stolen shadow's information based on shadow energy. A temporary trait has been granted. A temporary skill has been granted. A temporary talent has been granted. There is a lot of hidden information. Imitated only 71.5% of the analyzed information due to incomplete decryption. The trait, Shadow Play, has been created. Deducing the result. Beck Jio.O, %### at $, illegible. Title. Jigwee's phantom body at #%%$. Illegible. Guardian. Class. Rune Master. Level. 28. Special note. You are clumsily imitating the player Li Chung-sun right now. Stealing more information from him will allow you to imitate him better. This is. Jiao.O's eyes widened as he saw his new status window, which had become vastly different from his previous window. It seemed he had really imitated Chang.Sun's information. On his new status window, the word Jigwee's phantom body caught his attention first. Badump. Badump. The change was incredibly unexpected, and Jiao.O had never expected to create such a skill. The most surprising part was the magic that had not budged until then, or in other words, his shadow energy, was circulating smoothly. Shadow energy is energy that mimics something, so it needs a subject to imitate, Chang-sun explained. That was why, you told me to take your shadow, Jiao.O said. However, he was surprised again, although his voice was similar to his original voice, it had changed a lot, resembling Chang.Sun's voice. Yes, that was why, Chang-sun replied with a nod. Smiling visibly. While wrapped in shadow, Jiao.O looked like a knight wearing black plate armor that shone like obsidian, somehow reminding Chang. Son of Xerxes. The better you understand about the subject you imitate, the more meticulously and powerfully you can apply shadow energy, so watch and repeat after me from now on, Chang-sun said. Jiao.O nodded and tightly grabbed his spear. As he now understood what Chang-sun meant by becoming a shadow, he intended to perfectly become Chang.Sun's shadow. However, when Chang-sun pointed the nameless spear toward him, he knew he had still been complacent. It's heavy. Jiao.O thought in shock, sensing the calm air around Chang-sun abruptly changing. The Celestial, a good season to hunt, wants to judge how much your martial arts skill has been upgraded. The Celestial, Twilight, Piercing Owl, thinks your camaraderie is admirable. The Celestial, Calamity Tiger, wants to see how well you learned his skill. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The magic wind emanating from Chang-sun became fiercer. As he walked forward using Tiger Prowl, his Tiger Kill spread and mixed with Tiger Disaster, taking the form of a tiger. However, the tiger form behind Chang-sun looked completely different from before. It was larger and clearer. It was ash-colored and made up of clear lines. However, the biggest change was that the tiger looked more vicious, with one injured eye. He was finally using the power that had chosen and learned in the Tier 2 Fierce Tiger Library, Cruel Tiger. The Celestial, Calamity Tiger, watches your progress with satisfaction. He wants me to imitate this. Jiao.O thought, breaking into a cold sweat as he directly faced Chang.Sun's Cruel Tiger. Although he was imitating Chang-sun, it was difficult to think that he could actually mimic such a thing. In fact, the shadow energy that made up his body was about to scatter. Illegible. Unanalyzable. The gap between you and the shadow's owner is too big. Why aren't you picking up your spear? Chang-sun asked. Jiao.O nervously cleared his throat and held his spear in the same posture with which Chang-sun held the nameless spear. Even though he would not necessarily be able to perfectly mimic Chang-sun, Jiao.O wanted to at least try as much as possible, in order to be able to call himself Chang.Sun's shadow. Chang-sun contentedly watched Jiao.O's positioning, remembering that Xerxes had been just as persistent as Jiao.O. It seemed Xerxes' talent was not Jiao.O's only inheritance. Let's begin then, Chang-sun said, adjusting his grip. Step. When Chang-sun took one step forward, the Cruel Tiger, behind him also stepped forward. His swirling, Tiger Kill, was then sucked into his spearhead. By any standard, Chang-sun handled Cruel Tiger very proficiently. It would be inconceivable to think that it had only been a day since he learned it. The celestial, Calamity Tiger, is sad because you could have grown a lot more if you had also entered other chambers. After reading Hyoju's message, Chang-sun smiled enigmatically, and the celestial, Calamity Tiger, tilts his head, sensing that something is wrong. Soon, Hyoju felt strange. As Chang-sun drew a diagonal line in the air with the nameless spear, the cruel tiger, behind him scattered and transformed into an entirely different form. The tiger was now red, and its size had multiplied. It moved slowly, but the spearhead had an extremely heavy aura, as if it could crush anything. The celestial, Calamity Tiger, is struck with dismay. The celestial, Calamity Tiger, yells violently at you, asking what in the world you did in the library. The cruel tiger state has been changed into the fierce tiger state. The fierce tiger howls. A fierce tiger unleashed is raging. Chang-sun was also using a new trait that he had not chosen from the 9 traits that made up the Tier 2 library. Chapter 74. Star, the Shadow, 5, you are listening at novelfull.audio. In the executive meeting room located on the 7th floor of the White Tiger Clan's head office, 20 executives who had gathered early in the morning busily exchanged glances with each other. Executive Director Oh said, "Anyway, I would like to discuss how we should deal with the trainees from this year's training session. Of all occasions, why did it have to happen now? What on earth should I do? We won't be able to disregard that matter." What's on Executive Director Oh's mind? Each of the White Tiger Clan factions had different opinions about what suggestions to make, but they could not reach a conclusion, unable to sort out their thoughts. They could have done so if they had experienced a similar incident, but there was no precedent for the big case before them. Still, they could not just end the training session, because the clan members had been looking forward to this year's trainees. Not only did they include the world-famous super rookie Lee Chang-sun, there were also many hugely talented players such as Baek Jio. Shin-eun Seo, Lim Ju-han, and Kim Hyang-jun. If they had taken part in previous years, they would have been on top of the ranks with overwhelming scores. If the Hyoff clan scandal had not been exposed, the clan members would have focused all their attention and support on them. However, the clan had been busy with the Hyoff clan, and now they had an even bigger incident to take care of. They could not disregard their exceptional trainees by not giving them proper training, so they had to come up with a solution as soon as possible. It wouldn't be so problematic if the trainees had gone through at least half of the training session. The executives thought. As the training session had lasted for less than a month, the trainees had only learned basic knowledge, which would not be enough for the White Tiger Clan to immediately deploy them in actual missions. Thus, there was only one solution they could come up with. We have to put them through a new training session. The thought crossed every executive's head, but they were unsure what kind of training to implement, so it was difficult for them to make suggestions. In the end, only awkward silence filled the executive meeting room. Executive Director Oh frowned with discontent and glared at the other executives. They busily cleared their throats aimlessly, unable to meet his gaze. Isn't Director Gwon too quiet today? On the other hand, some of the executives glanced at Director Gwon Hyo-hae, because he always picked a fight with Executive Director Oh. They thought it was pastime for him to provoke Executive Director Oh. However, the strange part was that Executive Director Oh did not also look in Director Gwon's direction, as if he were avoiding Director Gwon on purpose. They did not appear to care about each other at all. Just what had happened? As some shrewd executives busily exchanged glances. Why don't we deal with it and the Hyoff scandal at the same time? Director Kim Yun-sung, who was in the lowest seat, suggested after he turned on his microphone. Although he was the youngest executive, he had left a lasting impression. As he had not taken any sides within the clan, there was even a rumor that both Executive Director Oh and Director Gwon had spared no effort to try to make Director Kim join them. Perhaps because the rumor was true, or simply because he was the first to make a suggestion, Executive Director Oh looked at Director Kim with great interest and asked, "How do we deal with it and the scandal simultaneously?" I recently heard that the Future Strategy Department had successfully found traces of the Phantom Demon, who was hiding like a rat, Director Kim explained. Even the council did not know that the White Tiger clan had found the Hyoff clan leader, which meant it was supposed to be among the most classified of secrets, but Director Kim had mentioned that nonchalantly. So. Executive Director O replied, squinting at Director Kim as if he would crush Director Kim's skull if he said something absurd. Seemingly not even feeling pressured, Director Kim casually replied, "Why don't we use this year's trainees to capture the Phantom Demon?" According to the instructors, the trainees luckily had a positive effect on each other, so they completed their basic training. So, what they lack is actual experience. There can be no better way for them to gain experience. What if the high-off guys blab? Executive Director O asked. Only the high-off executives know the exact details, so we can let the trainees deal only with small fries, not the executives. And most of all, Director Kim paused briefly, smiling coldly. Who would believe those unpardonable demons? All the executives nodded in agreement because, just as Director Kim said, no one would believe the Hyoff clan's remnants. Even if they said the demonic group and one of Korea's biggest clans had a close relationship, the public would think of it as a false rumor made up by busybodies. Tap. Tap. For a moment, Executive Director O stayed silent and pondered as he tapped his index finger on the table, analyzing the validity of Director Kim's suggestion. Then, Executive Director O looked in the opposite direction at Park Sang-ho, the attack Team 1 leader. As soon as Sang-ho made eye contact with Executive Director O, he straightened his posture. As the attack team leaders were considered important, they were treated like executives, entitled to participate in meetings like this. Team Leader Park, Executive Director O began. Yes, sir, Sang-ho answered immediately. What's your opinion of Director Kim's suggestion? Executive Director O asked, swiveling his chair in Sang-ho's direction. I believe it's a good plan, Sang-ho said with a nod. Is there a possibility of us sustaining great damage? Executive Director O asked, tilting his head. His canines gleaming coldly for some reason, Team Leader Sang-ho smiled faintly and replied, if they can't even survive through this, how can they be tigers? Good, Executive Director O said with a nod. He looked around, but still avoided looking at Director Gwon, who was sitting beside him. According to Director Kim's proposal, we'll substitute the training session with the Hyoff annihilation operation. We'll keep a record of the trainees' performance and decide which department they'll join. All the executives' gazes were on Executive Director O as he continued, on a separate note, we'll no longer treat Lee Chung-sun as a trainee, and transfer him to the Future Strategy Department, seeing as he cleared the dungeon. As if they had planned it beforehand, the executives' eyes simultaneously widened, and they quickly exchanged glances with each other. They were already well aware of how Executive Director O had taken a profound interest in Chung-sun, but they became nervous, because they had not expected Executive Director O to claim Chung-sun so blatantly. He was practically warning the other executives to not covet his men. Some executives naturally looked at Director Kim, because some time ago, Director Kim's son had been severely humiliated by Chung-Sunday. Despite his high scores in the tryouts and the training institute, he had peed himself, unable to say anything to Chung-Sunday. The new trainee Kim Hyung-jun was Director Kim Yun-sung's one and only son, so there had been a rumor quietly going around in the clan about how Director Kim could potentially attempt to harm Chung-Sunday. However, Executive Director O had openly claimed Chung-sun, making the executives all pay attention. However, Director Kim stayed silent with an expressionless face as if he had nothing to do with anything, thus, the other executives could not fathom what was going on inside his mind. After all the other executives exited the meeting room, only Executive Director O and Director Kim remained. Despite the distance between them, Director Kim was immensely pressured by Executive Director O, judging from how his outfit was soaked in cold sweat. Sometimes, Director Kim could not understand how such a small man could be so overwhelming, but Executive Director O's power was not the main thing driving him mad. The real reason was that Executive Director O had asked him to stay after the meeting, and yet said nothing. The silence in the room suffocated Director Kim, making him wonder whether he had done anything wrong. Suddenly, Executive Director O broke the silence, saying, "Director Kim." "Yes, sir." Director Kim exclaimed, suddenly standing up. Regardless, Executive Director O merely rested his chin on his hands and observed Director Kim with a sharp gaze, calmly asking, "You aren't up to anything, are you?" "I would never do such a thing." Director Kim solemnly swore. "Can I trust you?" Executive Director O asked, his eyes shining. "Yes, please trust me." Director Kim quickly answered, trying not to cause any suspicion in Executive Director O. Although they were both executives, they could not really be considered the same. Executive Director O was the White Tiger clan's second in command and had aided the clan leader while establishing the clan. In contrast to him, Director Kim was like a fly that could disappear with a single snort. Not only his executive title would be endangered, his very life would be on the line, as Executive Director O was a demon who would not hesitate to take matters into his own hands in times of need. "You know, I don't really care for my subordinates, because I see every one of them as disposable tools," Executive Director O began. Director Kim stayed silent, wondering why Executive Director O was telling him that. Every word the Executive Director used was menacing, leading Director Kim to interpret it as a warning. "And I happen to find that the sword I really liked," Executive Director O continued, emphasizing the word really. Director Kim remained silent. "But if the sword shattered or got damaged before I could properly use it, it wouldn't feel good, would it?" Executive Director O continued quietly. Thud. Director Kim quickly got out of his seat and kneeled, slamming his forehead against the floor. He hit the ground so hard that his forehead bled, but he did not care at all as he shouted, "Sir, I'll bring a whetstone and clear out all the unnecessary obstacles myself, so your sword will never get damaged. Please don't doubt my loyalty." Executive Director O remained silent this time. Thud. Thud. As Director Kim slammed his forehead against the floor multiple times, so hard that some would expect his skull to crack at any moment, a horrible sound filled the room. However, Executive Director O looked coldly down at the back of Director Kim's head. "Please trust me. I beg you." Director Kim desperately shouted, but Executive Director O remained silent for a long time. After quite some time, Director Kim exited the meeting room. "Father, there's blood on your face," Hyung Jun, who had been waiting in Director Kim's private office for his father to return, anxiously called out, because his father's forehead was covered with injuries and his face was smeared with blood. Thus, he hurriedly looked for the first aid kit that had been placed in the corner of his office, but Director Kim suddenly grabbed Hyung Jun's wrist. "Fath, Hyung Jun began, his eyes losing focus as he looked at Director Kim. His father's eyes shone more brightly than ever as he began, "Son." "Ha. Yes." Hyung Jun quickly replied. "You must kill him," Director Kim said in a low voice. For a moment, Hyung Jun's expression froze. He did not need to ask whom his father was telling him to kill. "I was going to tell you to just give Chang, son, as good as you got to repay the humiliation, but I changed my mind." "You should kill him no matter what," Director Kim said, tightening his grip. "Can I ask why I should?" Hyung Jun began, his voice trembling. No matter how determined he was to have revenge on Chang, son, he had led an ordinary life, so murder did not sit well with him. However, Director Kim grabbed Hyung Jun's shoulders as if he were telling his son to calm down and emphasized his next words. "He'll always be in your way and overshadow you. I'm not telling you to kill him just because he humiliated you. I'm telling you to get rid of him in advance or else he'll hinder you." Although Director Kim had desperately insisted he would not harm Chung, Sun multiple times, he had a totally different plan in mind. No, it was more accurate to say he was even more determined to carry out the plan because of Executive Director Oh's reaction. He could tell how much Executive Director Oh valued Chung, Sun. That meant he was bound to feel threatened, feeling that someday Chung, Sun would not only endanger his son, but also himself. Yes, I will, Hyung Jun said, nodding with a heavy heart. He was unable to say anything because the pressure from his father's bloodshot eyes gripped his heart. Strangely, however, as he answered and decided that he would do it, his nervousness subsided as if it should have done so from the start. In fact, a sense of anticipation, or perhaps excitement, about how he would be able to take revenge soon overwhelmed him. Yes, a man should toughen up a bit. I need to make an example, and let people know that people who have humiliated me won't have a good end. Hyung Jun thought with determination. As he reached that conclusion, however, his obsession with Seo flared up again. He thought ecstatically, after that bitch will. Hyung Jun's delusions had grown out of control in his mind. After that day, the Adios team members had begun avoiding him. On top of that, all the White Tiger Clan's members had heard about the incident, including this year's trainees, so he could no longer hold his head high as he went to Director Kim's office. In such a state, his future in the clan would surely be a mess. Thus, there was a need to straighten everything out. If he eliminated Chung, Sun, no one would consider him pathetic, and then he would be able to have his revenge on Seo, who had looked at him with disgust. Director Kim's gaze turned cold as he asked, "You're already aware that you shouldn't leave any traces, right?" "Don't worry. I have a plan," Hyung Jun said proudly. "What's your plan?" Director Kim asked. "Did you know that there's another person who was humiliated by Chung Sunday?" Hyung Jun replied. "Oh, really?" Director Kim asked, sounding intrigued, as there was no better way to leave no trace than using another person to take out the target. "Yes, his name is Lim Ju Hwan. He created a strange team called Mr. Lim or something," Hyung Jun explained. "Tell me about him in detail," Director Kim said, encouraging Hyung Jun to speak. Hyung Jun then unraveled the bundle of delusions that had been hidden inside his mind. Chapter 75. Star, The Shadow, 6, you are listening at novelfull.audio. The celestial, Calamity Tiger silently stares at you. The celestial, Calamity Tiger angrily asks what in the world you have done. After Chung, Sun displayed, Cruel Tiger, and Fierce Tiger, Hyoju sent him multiple messages asking what had happened. It was understandable because Hyoju had revealed all 9 tiger forms, in order to gain Chung, Sun as his subordinate. When Chung, Sun had only chosen Cruel Tiger, Hyoju had been a little sad, but not particularly worried. After people obtained some power, they were bound to want more numerous and greater abilities. Even if Chung, Sun had acquired Cruel Tiger, Hyoju had expected him to be unsatisfied with it, as the 9 tiger forms were compatible with each other. The more tiger forms one had, the stronger one became. However, Chung, Sun had used Fierce Tiger perfectly, a skill Hyoju had not allowed him to have. Fierce Tiger was not even the end of it. Chung, Sun had successfully utilized Jackal Tiger and Roaming Tiger, which meant he had mastered 4 out of the 9 tiger forms. Fierce Tiger, the tiger that holds only 2 attributes, bravery and strength. No being can fight against the fierce tiger that can shake a mountain. Type. Trait. Effect. Highly experienced veteran. Increased superhuman strength. Jackal Tiger, the tiger that holds only 2 attributes, brutality and ferocity. The brutal tiger's target can never survive. Type. Trait. Effect. Cruel shredding. Overwhelming brutality. Roaming Tiger, the tiger that holds only 2 attributes, agility and wisdom. Before the intelligent tiger begins its hunt, it quickly understands the surrounding environment and moves nimbly. Type. Trait that effect. Increased understanding. Cognitive acceleration. Each tiger form had different characteristics. As cruel tiger, focused on driving an opponent into a corner, it specialized in hunting. Fierce tiger bestowed one superhuman strength, enabling one to overwhelm an opponent with power. Meanwhile, jackal tiger granted one the tenacity to never lose a target. Roaming tiger enhanced one's ability to think, allowing for rational judgments to inform nimble movements. Hyoju was bound to be enraged to see Chang Sun learning skills he had not allowed Chang Sun to learn. On the other hand, he was very curious about how Chang Sun had done it. The celestial world encircling serpent says Calamity Tiger should have seen it coming when he let you learn one form, pounding the ground with his tail. The celestial Calamity Tiger asks what world encircling serpent means. The celestial world encircling serpent says that when someone gives you one thing, you will definitely snatch away other things too. The celestial Calamity Tiger listens seriously. The celestial world encircling serpent advises the Calamity Tiger to give up, because he was destined to involuntarily become a fairy godfather ever since he met you. The celestial Twilight piercing owl nods in agreement. The celestial abyss chasing great devil agrees. The celestial a good season to hunt tilts her head in confusion because it feels as if the world encircling serpent is talking about a specific being, but she is not sure who he is talking about. The celestial Calamity Tiger frowns. What are they doing? Chang Sun thought. Even though Chang Sun had given no explanation, J.Rumungandr spoke as if it were very natural for him to take everything. On top of that, even Minerva and Mephistopheles had naturally nodded along in agreement with J.Rumungandr, which meant Hyoju was swayed by them and began to think this outcome had been inevitable. Chang Sun briefly wondered what to think about the current situation, but decided not to care about it in the end. It looked as if the deities understood the situation, as Chang Sun had analyzed and mastered the other 8 tiger forms, based on cruel tiger. Well, they aren't completely wrong. Chang Sun thought with a shrug. The celestial Calamity Tiger wants you even more. In truth, Chang Sun had been able to learn the additional 3 tiger forms, simply because he had a very deep understanding of Hyoju. As he had become very aware of who Hyoju was, what Hyoju was like, and what kind of myth Hyoju was from during the myth war, he had naturally been able to derive the other forms from cruel tiger, the first clue needed to approach Hyoju's myth. However, Hyoju did not know about any of that, so he merely believed Chang Sun's talent was greater than he had expected. Through this incident, he'll think he really can't let other deities take me away, Chang Sun thought. The corners of his lips automatically curled up. Boom, boom, boom. Rumble. Then, Chang Sun looked over at the source of the sudden explosions that filled the air. Still wearing the shadow doll, Baek Jio had been training in various ways. From the way he stepped forward to the way he swung the spear, his every habit resembled Chang Sunday. The player Baek Jio is imitating your cruel tiger. The skill Shadow Treading has been activated. The skill Shadow Game has been activated. He's doing better than I expected. Chang Sun thought with a nod. Shadow Treading and Shadow Game were the skills that originated from Shadow Doll creation. It would normally have needed a substantial amount of time to create them, but Jio.ul was already using them both perfectly. It seemed he would be able to complete the remaining parts of Shadow Play more quickly than Chang Sun had expected. By then, it would be no exaggeration to call Jio.ul Chang Sun's shadow. It'll be better to just teach him the basics and let him figure out details on his own, Chang Sun thought. Feeling somewhat relieved, he sat down on a nearby rock. Then, shall I check these out now? While examining Jio.ul's movements with beast senses, Chang Sun divided his attention to look at his inventory. As he had finished settling the Black Blood Mountain Range affair, it was time to see what he had obtained in the secret tiger lab. Pulled out the unknown scroll. Chang Sun had obtained many items from atop the secret altar platform where Shin-un, Seo had been turning into a Gildao. The item that had caught his eye the most was a scroll made from old leather. Unknown scroll, an unknown scroll made from human skin. The ominous scroll is full of mysterious curses and locked tightly. It seems to require a specific process in order to unlock it. Type: Scroll. Effect: Unable to inspect the details of the relic. The fact that the scroll was made from human skin already sounded ominous enough. To unlock the scroll, Chang Sun tried shaking it, and then infusing a large amount of his magic, but it did not budge. The scroll did not reject Chang Sun's magic, but rather drank it in without showing any noticeable change. It was as if he were pouring water into an abyss he could not gauge the depth of. Seeing as this scroll was present while they were making a Gildao, it must be related to the 7 cryptical books of San, or something. Chang Sun concluded. Was this scroll a partial copy of the 3 scrolls the White Tiger clan had obtained? Chang Sun thought that was a reasonable conjecture. Even a copy of a grimoire usually holds the grimoire's power too, Chang Sun thought, narrowing his eyes. I'll be able to figure out more if I can check the scroll's contents. Knowing that he stood to find out what the 7 cryptical books of San actually was, he focused, beast senses, entirely on the scroll, infusing all his energy and magic to identify its structure. Then, perhaps, he could unlock the scroll somehow. The skill, Beast Senses, has been activated, meticulously examining the unknown scroll. Just as before, Chang Sun was only able to feel a vast, dark abyss. Deciding to take a closer look, he infused all his energy into it. Just then, Kia Kikikikiki detected an intense Hoenn Mama. The horrible sound of ghostly wails echoed through the deep abyss. At the same time, powerful winds blew, carrying an ominous aura that dragged Chang Sun's energy into the abyss. What? The Hoenn Mama is here too. Chang Sun thought, quickly coming back to his senses. Until then, he had believed the Hoenn Mama was a phenomenon caused when Hyoju's magic and the secret techniques of the 7 cryptical books of San were mixed together. However, based on this scroll, the 7 cryptical books of San had contained the Hoenn Mama from the start. On top of that, this Hoenn Mama was very different from that of the ghost soldiers and the Gildao. It was more ominous, insidious, and dangerous, enough for even Chang Sun to feel a chill. Kia. The celestial calamity tiger is interested, looking forward to seeing how you will overcome this Hoenn Mama. This isn't a copy. It's the original scroll. Chang Sun thought, realizing his previous conjectures were all wrong. As the scroll had been lying around in such a place without any protective devices, Chang Sun had believed that it could only be a partial copy of one of the 7 cryptical books of San, but an ordinary copy would never carry such an intense Hoenn Mama on its own. The scroll had to be the original celestial obejk that contained the mighty authority of what has Executive Director O done. Chang Sun thought, gaping slightly. Only 3 of the scrolls were with the White Tiger clan, which meant Executive Director O had stolen one of them. How was it possible to fool the White Tiger clan's leader and steal the scroll, though? The Munseong Chang Sun had met was no pushover who could be fooled so easily. However, Chang Sun could not focus on finding the answer. I have to let go of it. Chang Sun thought, clenching his teeth. At this rate, the Hoenn Mama would drag his entire soul into the abyss, so Chang Sun tried to drop the scroll. However, the Hoenn Mama is raging. The Hoenn Mama wants to devour you. The tiger roar opens its vicious jaws. Once the Hoenn Mama took hold of Chang Sun, it clung to him like a leech. Despite Chang.Sun's fierce resistance, the Hoenn Mama attempted to infect him, trying to steal his body by tainting his mind. The tiger chaos wants to devour you. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Rumble, rumble. The Hoenn Mama trembled, shaking the ground and Chang.Sun with its insidious demonic energy. Chang.Sun ignited the Jigwee's Ian fire to fight against the Hoenn Mama, causing black demonic energy scarlet fire to clash against each other. I should do something. Chang.Sun thought. As he looked for a solution, he suddenly thought of Peter's key around his neck. Seeing as this golden key unlocked the locked door, it may open the locked scroll. It was a valid conjecture, as the White Tiger and the Hyoff clan were the ones who had put in great effort to acquire the golden key in the first place. When Chang.Sun reached that conclusion, he realized he had nothing to lose, and quickly brought the scroll close to his neck. Then, the golden key inside his shirt trembled as if it were asking him to use it. The celestial Calamity Tiger observes your reactions. Shit, it's not going to unlock automatically the way it did with the door. I didn't want .hyoju.to find out about this yet. Chang.Sun thought, gritting his teeth. He had been planning to delay revealing Peter's key as much as possible because he was unsure how Hyoju would react upon finding out that he had taken it. However, he thought getting away from the damned scroll was a greater priority. Forcefully snapping the chain around his neck, Chang.Sun grabbed the golden key. The celestial Calamity Tiger is shocked to see that key, which he had never anticipated to see here. The celestial Calamity Tiger bursts into manic laughter, saying he knew the key would end up in his hands. Chang.Sun pierced the scroll with Peter's key. Although there was no visible lock, he could feel the end of the golden key easily sinking into the scroll. Click. He vaguely heard the sound of a lock opening. Peter's key has successfully found the keyhole of the unknown scroll. The lock has been disengaged. Rattle. As Chang.Sun turned the golden key sideways, the scroll's lock, which had been sealed tightly, disengaged. The scroll unfurled itself to reveal its contents. Chang.Sun saw bizarre, illegible symbols filling the scroll. The black symbols squirmed as if they were living worms, emitting strange demonic energy. The Hoenn Mama has been halted. Just then, Chang.Sun was flung backward. Hup. Chang.Sun groaned as he rolled across the floor, losing his grip on the scroll due to his lack of strength. He had to spend a long time calming down his unsettled stomach and dizzy head. Even as he did so, several messages continuously appeared. The scroll's hidden contents have been revealed. The symbols within are squirming. The sentences are looking for a chance to escape the scroll. Acquired the 4th cryptical book of the 7 cryptical books of Sand. Chapter 76. Star, the Changwei Cave, 1, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Hyung.nim, are you okay? Baek Jio.ul urgently approached Chang.Sun when he heard the explosion sound. Chang.Sun quickly reached out with the palm of his hand facing Jio.ul's direction, meaning he shouldn't come any closer. There was no telling how the unlocked scroll would harm Jio.ul. Realizing Chang.Sun's intentions, Jio.ul came to a halt as his eyes lost focus a little. Chang.Sun silently nodded to reassure him. Jio.ul looked at Chang.Sun with worried eyes, but he soon stepped backward and tightly grabbed his spear in preparation, watching to see if Chang.Sun sustained any damage. However, Chang.Sun couldn't even look in Jio.ul's direction, as he was already busy checking the unlocked scroll. 4th Cryptical Book of San, the 4th piece of the 7 cryptical books. The knowledge from ancient times that even the Celestials had forgotten was recorded in these books. This piece held the power of the disappeared, so one had to be careful not to be possessed while handling it. There were other secrets and abilities, but it seemed it needed to be connected with the other pieces in order to see them. Type. Scroll. Star object. Effect. Recorded knowledge. unable to inspect other details. It's the fourth. Chang Sun opened his eyes wide. As far as he knew, the White Tiger clan had obtained 3 of the 7 cryptical books of San. However, this scroll said otherwise, meaning even the Hyoff clan hadn't been aware of the truth. No, Executive Director O must have secretly found the 4th cryptical book and kept it to himself. Chang Sun concluded, feeling like he was finally piecing together the unsolved puzzle. He had been wondering how Executive Director O had stolen one of the scrolls when they were treated as confidential, and would have been under tight security. It seemed Executive Director O hadn't even touched the 3 scrolls in the first place, and had just hidden the newly found knowledge. Was this why he could make a Gildao? Chang Sun wondered. Unlike how the White Tiger clan manufactured the ghost soldiers, Lab Director Yang Sang one had somehow known the advanced form of the ghost soldiers, the Gildao. When he remembered how Executive Director O and Lab Director Sang one had joined forces, Chang Sun finally understood how Sang one had acquired the knowledge. But, how in the world did he interpret this? Chang Sun thought as he squinted down at the scroll. Black symbols squirmed across the page frantically, as if they were going to jump off the scroll at any second. Even Chang Sun, who had mastered runes, had never even seen these symbols, so he was amazed that the White Tiger clan had somehow analyzed them. Judging from how they can create the Hoenn Mama, the recorded knowledge must be extraordinary. Chang Sun thought. Interpreting the symbols would require a substantial amount of time, but the problem was that even Chang Sun wasn't sure exactly how long. With other scrolls, there would have been more samples that he could use to quicken the interpretation process. With this cryptical book, however, Chang Sun only had one. Hyoju won't readily teach me. Chang Sun assumed. He would have to take time and slowly interpret it. Fortunately, through experiencing the Hoenn Mama several times, Chang Sun had much experience dealing with the products of the cryptical books, the ghost soldiers and the Gildao. Still, I can't leave such an ominous item out in the open. Chang Sun thought when he saw the Hoenn Mama from within the scroll tainting the air. Considering sealing it with Peter's key, if necessary, Chang Sun began to close the scroll. The celestial abyss, chasing great devil, is interested in your belonging. What? Chang Sun wondered. It was a message from Mephistopheles, who hadn't sent a message in a while. Despite his interest in Chang Sun, he never really cared about what Chang Sun did. Yet, he was interested enough in the 7 cryptical books of San, to finally send a message making Chang Sun open his eyes wide in shock. This was the first time Chang Sun had seen Mephistopheles acting like this. The celestial abyss, chasing great devil, still awaits your answer. Answer. Ah. Chang Sun didn't understand what Mephistopheles meant at first, realizing a bit later with a light chuckle. In the tutorial dungeon, he had rejected Mephistopheles' offer to become his apostle in exchange for the magic Chang Sun had gathered with the fake brand. Since Chang Sun thought the offer wasn't even worth paying attention to, he had been ignoring Mephistopheles. However, it seemed Mephistopheles had been waiting for an answer continuously since that day. The celestial abyss, chasing great devil, shows his intention to substitute the reward with this if you aren't going to give him an answer. What's he doing? Chang Sun tensed up as he read the message, since even he couldn't predict the eccentric Mephistopheles' next move. Pa! At that moment, a brilliant ray of light shone from the scroll. As a bonus reward, you are now able to interpret the letters on the scroll. What? Chang Sun opened his eyes wide upon receiving the unexpected bonus reward. The scroll contains related knowledge, but Mephistopheles was able to interpret the text this easily. The celestial calamity tiger screams loudly, saying it does not make any sense. The celestial Twilight piercing owl has false hope. The celestial world encircling serpent wants to check the scroll's content through your eyes. Now, Chang Sun could really read and understand the symbols dancing around the page. Although the letters still appeared illegible, Chang Sun could understand the content from top to bottom. The scroll looked like a deity's message to their followers, but when he read between the lines to try to find the hidden meaning, he could tell the scroll contained all kinds of knowledge. The celestial world encircling serpent says he can't read the scroll, angrily slamming the ground. While the inquisitive Rumunganda clicked his tongue in disappointment. It's impossible to fully interpret because I don't have the previous 3 scrolls, but I can make a rough guess. Chang Sun thought as he quickly took in the scroll's knowledge, deciphering and analyzing it based on his basic knowledge of the Hoenn Mama. The hidden requirement interpreting letters has been fulfilled. The hidden requirement searching information has been fulfilled. Successfully deciphering all the knowledge. A hidden piece has been located. A new quest to obtain it has been created. The hidden path in the starlight, type. Hidden. Explanation. While on your adventure, you successfully unraveled part of the secret of the 7 cryptical books of San, providing you with the most advanced knowledge about Hoenn Mama. You have also proven that you have a strong, sturdy mind and body that won't be easily infected by Hoenn Mama. However, the secret of the 7 cryptical books of San is much bigger and deeper than you expected. Divulge the secret and you will have the power, knowledge, and starlight of the 7 cryptical books of San, because you will be entitled to own everything. Requirement. The 7 cryptical books of San decipher. If you fail. Mind contamination. If you succeed. The starlight of the A hidden piece. Chang Sun wondered. Accept the hidden quest. Y/N, Chang Sun narrowed his eyes when he saw the message before him. This was the Sword Sky Tiger's power. He noticed that completing this hidden quest was required to acquire a bigger power than the Ghost Soldiers or the Gildao. The 7 cryptical books of San held. Although the Sword Sky Tiger Munseong was in the same environment as the other Ghost Soldiers, his power was somehow far superior to theirs, and Chang Sun had been wondering why. This hidden quest answered Chang Sun's question. Munseong had somehow reached the origin of the starlight, which was incomparably better than the Ghost Soldiers and the Gildal starlight, and acquired it. Executive Director O has just been scratching the surface. Chang Sun thought with certainty. Executive Director O had found the 4th cryptical book, but failed to become a true owner. Otherwise, he would have done more than just make the Gildao. Or he just left the scroll lying around on the altar. Chang Sun shrugged. Of course, he would have been very satisfied with himself for making very good use of the scroll. No, he might be anxious now because the scroll disappeared suddenly. Chang Sun thought. The celestial calamity tiger opens his eyes wide to see what choice you will make. He let me take the scroll because he believed Executive Director O wouldn't be able to get much use out of it. Chang Sun assumed, thinking Hyoju had uncharacteristically planned ahead in detail. Judging from how he was looking forward to the secret of the 7 cryptical books of San, Chang Sun could be certain that there was definitely something to the books. Although he was given a choice whether or not to accept the quest, his mind had already been made up since the start. Jio.O, Chang Sun called out, breaking the silence. Yes, Hyung.Nim. Jio.O replied, tensing up. From now on, never interfere no matter what happens. And don't let other people enter, either. Chang Sun instructed. What are you going to do? Jio.O asked. You can do that for me, right? Chang Sun said, ignoring Jio.O's question. Jio.O's face hardened, and he nodded with a heavy heart. Yes, I can. Right now, Chang Sun needed to know if Jio.O could follow his orders, not understand the situation, so Jio.O didn't waste time pondering. Hyung.Nim is a mysterious man, with secrets that I can't even begin to fathom. This must be one of them. No player had even been able to think about curing Jio.O's half-spirit curse, but Chang Sun had done it perfectly. Jiao.O already considered Chang Sun to be on a different tier from other human beings, so he wasn't planning on asking questions. If necessary, Chang Sun would explain. Jiao.O figured there was a reason Chang Sun believed he didn't need to explain, and that now was not the time to doubt his plan. That's what a real shadow should do. Jiao.O believed. Chang Sun had told Jiao.O to become his shadow, so he decided to be the perfect shadow. Noticing Jiao.O's determination, Chang Sun faintly smiled and turned to look at the scroll again. The message offering the hidden quest was still floating above it. I'm going to do it, but I can't tell what I am supposed to do from this explanation. Chang Sun thought, tilting his head. He was able to tell that he had to take some kind of test, but he wasn't sure what the test was about, which frustrated him a little. Still, he had made up his mind already, so he pressed Y. Whoosh! A black ray of light soared up from the scroll, blocking Chang Sun's view. You have accepted the hidden quest. You have been invited to the instance dungeon to complete the quest. The Hoenn Mama is raging again. The tiger roar opens its mouth. The tiger chaos has been activated. The celestial, Twilight, piercing owl, bestows upon you a belated gift, praying that you stay healthy. The authority, unyielding spirit and the authority, composed spirit, have been combined. An authority has been created. LO along with multiple messages. You have entered the instance dungeon, Changmi Cave. Chang Sun was greeted by a new world. Chapter 77. Star, the Changmi Cave, 2, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Commencing the dungeon quest. Quest theme. Survival and conquest. You are currently under Hoenn Mama's severe curse. The curse will be activated every 24 hours and invite you to the hidden plane, Changmi's Cave. The Changmi Cave is a complicated labyrinth consisting of 9 floors. Each floor is made up of different environments and cities, and the various kinds of Changmis that are detained by the Hoenn Mama reside within. All the Changmis instinctively hate humans, and will kill humans using any means necessary and turn them into allies. Survive the incoming wave of Changmi attacks. In order to completely undo the Hoenn Mama's curse, you must conquer all 9 floors. And will be shown, so check them regularly. Good luck to all participants. Day 1 of the dungeon quest has begun. Survive for 6 hours, starting now. 06.00.00, 05.59.59.99, 05.59.59.98, current location. The first sector of the first floor. The curse will be activated every 24 hours. Chang Sun noticed. He could vaguely tell what the hidden quest, the hidden path in the starlight, was about. Some curses were designed for hunting a target with unyielding willpower, repeating the same curse at a set time every day. No matter how strong one's willpower was, nobody could endure suffering from the curse that confused and deranged one's mind every day. In the end, those under the curse would be killed. During his divine twilight years, Chang Sun had seen similar curses many times. The celestials he killed had put their final curses on him with the last of their strength. It was not easy to undo such curses due to their strong grudges. The hidden quest was one such curse. Hoenn Mama is the residual energy of the scroll's original owner. In other words, the residual energy is the starlight. So were Changmis bewitched by the starlight, making them lose their souls? Chang Sun wondered. It was commonly known that Changmis were spirits killed by a Hoenn Mama. When they found tigers, they would guide them to humans to create more victims like itself. Judging from the dungeon quest explanation, the dungeon was full of such Changmis, and Chang Sun had to survive their attacks. Since there was a time limit, it seemed to be a time-attack type of quest. If I get killed here, the Hoenn Mama will get a complete hold of my soul and turn it into a Changmi, and my body will be tainted and become a ghost soldier or a guild owl. Chang Sun thought.
If he lasted until the end of the set time, pre-selected gifts would be given to him, potentially the purified Hoenn Mama or Starlight. Chang.Sun's eyes shone bright. The Sword Sky Tiger acquired his power through this kind of dungeon quest. The Celestial Calamity Tiger wonders how you will escape the dungeon. People's minds would ordinarily become exhausted if they went through life-and-death battles again and again for several hours, but Chang.Sun thought it might be fun. He had led this kind of life for so long that he rather enjoyed moments like these. I'm a bit different. Tap. Tap. Chang.Sun walked toward the center of the first sector, which was a round, vacant space connected by 3 or 4 mine shafts. On the ceiling, a magic light illuminated the inside. When he went a little further inside, something walked out from a mine shaft opposite him. Kikiki. It's a human. A human. It was a Changui. They didn't look so different from humans, but their skin and face were typically pale and blue like a corpse, with big dark bags under their eyes that made them look even more dead. Corpse toxin dripped from its sagging skin, scattering through the air like smoke and spreading the stench of rot everywhere. The Celestial, a good season to hunt, advises you to get rid of the smelly and ugly monster and get to somewhere else. Its overall appearance looked like a zombie or a ghoul, but unlike those monsters that functioned off of instincts alone, the Changui seemed to have some ability to think rationally. As Chang.Sun looked at the Changui, he could sense various feelings in its shining eyes, namely greed and hunger. He could also tell that it carried a considerable amount of magic. It wanted to devour Chang.Sun because it knew he was a living person. Is the attack starting with just one Changui? Chang.Sun thought. Despite his combat experience, Chang.Sun had never seen a Changui before. Since it seemed to be an immortal or ghost-type monster, he had to check its ability first. But before I do any of that. Before starting the hidden quest, Chang.Sun checked Minerva's reward first. From what he remembered, Minerva had definitely gifted him an authority. Kalokagathia, an authority created by combining the unyielding spirit and composed spirit, the previous bonus rewards from the celestial Twilight, piercing owl. Only an ascetic that has mastered physical kalos and mental agathos can acquire the authority. During times of hardship, your mind will become the symbol of an iron will that never yields, and your body will become the symbol of the veteran that overcomes all. An ideal does not exist independently, so when everything harmonizes, you will be closer to divine greatness. Skill level. 1 type. Authority. Blessing. Protection. Effect. Immunity to mental debuffs. Indomitable bravery. Ability to overcome hardships. Well, I thought, insightful eyes, or goddess sword, would be enough, but it seems Minerva adores me a lot. Kalokagathia, ordinarily referred to the best level of enlightenment within the Illuminati, the clan that worshipped Minerva. The Illuminati members worked very hard so Minerva would recognize them. However, she had given the seal of recognition to Chang.Sun, who wasn't one of her followers. There was a high chance that the Illuminati members would fall into chaos once they found out. However, regardless of its value, the effects of Kalokagathia were quite good. He already had immunity to mental debuffs, the effect that undid all mental curses, from unyielding spirit and composed spirit, but overcome hardships was the true cherry on top that Kalokagathia provided. During long battles, it's difficult to stay composed due to depleted stamina and mental fatigue, but Kalokagathia solves that problem. The greater the fatigue, the energy consumption, or the risk was, the more his abilities would increase. In other words, the more enemies Chang.Sun fought against, the stronger he became. The stronger the enemies were, the more Chang.Sun could overcome his limit, enabling him to become as powerful as his past self. Therefore, there was no better authority than Kalokagathia. With this authority, Minerva had unwittingly put wings on Chang.Sun's back. The celestial Twilight, piercing owl, sends you blessings as you head off on a dangerous journey. It'll be fun. Chang Sun thought as he smiled coldly, thinking he would be able to fight more Changweis than he had expected. He pulled out Tiamat's snaggletooth from his waist pocket and held it in a reverse grip. Human. I'll eat you. The Changwei slowly spoke. Sa, a low-rank Changwei, the most common one found in the Changwei cave. Pa, the attack has been initiated. Kia. The Changwei couldn't stay still anymore, so it pounced at Chang Sun, drooling. The skill of Viper Eyes has been activated, tracking the opponent's weaknesses. The skill, Beast Senses has been activated, heightening all your senses. The authority Kalokagathia has been activated, adjusting your ability. Clash. The Changwei's sword and Tiamat's snaggletooth clashed together. You're pretty good. But you'll still end up in my stomach. The Changwei broke into manic laughter and swiped its long nails at Chang Sun, closing in on him. Its voice was mixed with ghostly wails, so the ends of its sentences seemed to trail off, making it sound more ominous. Clash. Clang, clash. Every time the Changwei attacked, it spread corpse toxin everywhere. The further it spread, the louder the Changwei's manic laughter grew. You may be able to stop my attacks now. But my toxin is slowly corroding your body. Your body will become so heavy that you'll fall. Clang, clash, clang. Then you'll become a Changwei, just like me. The Changwei said with a twisted grin. Swing. Clash, clash. You should become. The Changwei trailed off. Swoosh, swoosh. You should have become. The Changwei frowned. Slash. Slash. Why aren't you becoming a Changwei? The Changwei asked. Boom. Regardless of what the Changwei said, Chang Sun didn't answer and swung Tiamat's snaggletooth over and over, slicing through the Changwei's flesh and limbs. In the end, he stabbed through its heart, and with the sound of an explosion, a head-sized hole formed in its chest. The Changwei's eyes lost focus. How? The Changwei stuttered. He was bound to be perplexed. The corpse toxin was classified as a high-ranking lethal toxin, and Changwei's corpse toxin was even more lethal than the ordinary one, even containing acid. A drop of its corpse toxin would have been enough to kill an elephant, but Chang Sun wasn't even affected, let alone killed. The effect 10 toxin immunity has neutralized all the toxins. The Changwei didn't know that Chang Sun was already immune to all the corpse toxin-related toxins. Are all the monsters the same level as you? Chang Sun asked, clicking his tongue. What? The Changwei asked back. That would be disappointing, said Chang Sunday. Hold on. The Changwei exclaimed, believing something was wrong, but Chang Sun cut its head off with Tiamat's snaggletooth before it could speak. Slash. Tumble. The Changwei's head fell and rolled pathetically along the ground. Soon, the amputated head and its body both corroded, and the remaining particles scattered in the wind, forming a whirlpool in the air. The particles spun around for a moment before flying into Chang Sunday. Eliminated the low-ranking Changwei, Sa. Acquired the Changwei's Hoenn Mama. Your physical constitution has changed very slightly. The change is minuscule right now. Eliminate more Changweis, and acquire more Hoenn Mama. Click. Click. As the particles settled down inside Chang Sun's body, he could hear something being united within him. Although the change was very small, he could feel his muscles toughen up, and his magic increase. Chang Sun nodded. So this is how it works. His guess had turned out to be correct. If he got devoured by the Hoenn Mama, he would become a ghost soldier or a Gildao, but when he dominated the Hoenn Mama, he was going to walk down a different path, like the Sword Sky Tiger had done. But I can't be satisfied with just that. Chang Sun smiled coldly.
Even though he was happy to become stronger through the Hoenn Mama, he didn't want to be dragged into a situation he had no control over. The Hoenn Mama made one's body and soul stronger, but it also turned one into an inhuman. He didn't wish to go down that path. Feeling the Hoenn Mama settling inside his body, Chang Sun quickly started the Ian fire of the 8 trigrams brazier. This power could destroy and recover anything, and it would be able to turn the Hoenn Mama into anything Chang Sun wanted. Above all else, if the Hoenn Mama is a type of ghost energy, then I'll be able to control it however I want. Chang Sun was the underworld certified reaper. The effect single Ian fire has been activated. The absorbed Hoenn Mama and the fire are mixing with each other, and the Hoenn Mama is slowly being purified. The Hoenn Mama is resisting hard. Kia. The Hoenn Mama that had been clinging on to Chang Sun writhed around upon encountering this unexpected situation. If it was purified, it would lose its identity as Hoenn Mama, so it attempted to fight off the approaching fire. However, it was futile to try when even a Jigui couldn't resist the effect. The effect single Ian fire flares up more intensely. The Hoenn Mama is crumbling apart, unable to withstand the fire. The Hoenn Mama is going through purification. The Hoenn Mama is mutating. A new kind of Mama has been created. Achievement unlocked. The Mama that devours Hoenn Mama. Reward. Intelligence +5. Willpower +3. The celestial Calamity Tiger opens his eyes wide in shock upon seeing such an unexpected outcome. The celestial, a good season to hunt, quietly rolls her eyes, unable to tell what is going on. The celestial world encircling serpent observes the new starlight that has transformed from the starlight left by the with interest. Pa. The black energy that settled down within Chang Sun turned to ash and united with his body. Successfully absorbed the new purified Mama. Your mana now has the Baihui attribute, along with the Jigui attribute. Found the forgotten starlight. A Baihui was a cryptid that was known to eat tiger monsters, and sometimes, it was classified as a divine creature. Chang Sun had never expected his magic to gain the Baihui attribute. In other words, he had now become a natural enemy of anything related to Hyoju, like the Hoenn Mama. Things are starting to get interesting. Chang Sun was beginning to think that he would be able to have a similar, but ultimately different result than the Sword Sky Tiger. Smiling enigmatically, he slowly headed towards Sector 2. Chapter 78. Star, the Changhui Cave, 3, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Current location. The Sector 12 of the first floor. The remaining time to complete the Day 1 dungeon quest is as follows. 00.08.43.22, 00.08.43.21, 00.08.43.20, st stop. Where in the world did he come from? We have to block this route. Arg, L.RG boom, crash, bang. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The Changhui's ordinary, peaceful afternoon was abruptly interrupted by a disaster, sending them into a frenzy. When the Changhuis first heard about a new human in the Changhui cave, they had thought the human would become one of them in no time. Many people had already been bewitched by the starlight of 7 cryptical books of San, and entered the Changhui cave, but no one had walked out of the cave alive. Most visitors were eaten by the voracious Changhuis, or killed themselves once they realized they were stuck in a hell they couldn't escape. Once in a blue moon, there were people who successfully escaped the Changhui cave, but they all returned and became Gulhan on the 9th floor in the end. That was how attractive Hoenn Mama's power was, and being bewitched and becoming a part of the was the best way to gain as much as possible for the Changhuis who had lost freedom. However, this happened very rarely, and most of them remained as Changhuis. The Changhuis that were able to find the human first always attracted envy, since devouring a human was the fastest way of becoming a Hongsao. However, he killed our leader. Unbelievable. It didn't take long for the Changweis to realize that they had been wrong. From Sector 1 to the final Sector 12, any Changwei who faced this human were massacred. None could even land an attack on the human, let alone devour him. Swish, swish, swish. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The effect, single Ian fire, is blazing up. The authority perfect marksmanship has been activated. As Chang Sun ran, he swung the whip, and with each swing, the Changweis died one after another. Chang Sun struck with the one-tailed whip, but at times it would morph into a nine-tailed whip. It was impossible to predict the whip's movement, and on top of that, it was covered with the blazing Jigwee's Ian fire. Eliminated the Changwei. Eliminated the Changwei. The authority soul exploitation has been activated, acquiring the ashes. Successfully absorbed the purified Mama. You have gained the Baihui factor. You have gained the Baihui factor. The Celestial, a good season to hunt, is having a refreshing bit of fun watching your overwhelming combat power. The Celestial, Calamity Tiger, meticulously observes your sharp attacks. Even if they somehow avoided the firestorm created by the nine-tailed whip and managed to approach Chang Sun. The state, Fierce Tiger, has been applied. The additional skill, Fierce Tiger, has been activated with a deafening roar. The additional skill, Fierce Tiger Dispatch, has been activated, raging on the battlefield. Click. Boom, boom, boom. With the nameless spear in his left hand, Chang Sun fiercely stabbed the Changweis, bouncing off of it with holes in their body as if a real tiger had charged at them. It was a one-sided massacre. Achievement unlocked. The natural enemy and devourer of Changweis reward. Strength +5. The Baihui factor. In the end, Chang Sun only went straight forward without retreating once, destroying and burning every monster in his way, from the Changwei Cave's entrance to the final sector of the first floor. Despite their manpower, the Changweis were all killed or subdued, unable to inflict even a single wound on Chang Sunday. Level up. While Chang Sun saw a pleasant message he hadn't seen in a while. Unbelievable. MOMO monster. He's not a human. He must be a monster, like us. A few remaining Changweis trembled in fear. They did not dare even try to approach Chang Sunday. Some weren't even able to feel their legs, collapsing to the ground helplessly. The fear is spreading among the Changweis. The chaos is infecting the Changweis. The Jigwee's Ian fire was already near them, wanting to swallow them whole, but there was no escape for the Changweis. At their front, Chang Sun advanced with his dagger, while the fire flaunted its scarlet glow at their back. They had nowhere left to run. Of course, there was a way to the second floor quite a distance away, but the Changwei Cave was practically a jungle, where only the strongest could survive. The second floor was no place for weak Changweis like them. Regardless, the Changweis were sure that even if they ran off to the second floor, the Hongsels, there wouldn't last long against the monster-like human. Either way, death was inevitable. The state, Fierce Tiger, has been changed to the Cruel Tiger. The Fierce Tiger overwhelms the opponents on the battlefield with its menacing energy. Chang Sun's right eye shone with a brilliant scarlet hue. Cruel Tiger's one eye was an additional skill that broke the spirit of the targets and put the fear of death in them once they were detected. Although they barely had any will left to stand up to Chang Sun, they felt what was left of their willpower being broken. Tap. Tap. Perhaps because of the state they were in, Chang Sun's footsteps sounded unusually loud as he walked towards them. Successfully conquered the first floor. You have entered the second floor. You have entered the third sector of the second floor. The given time limit has ended. Day 1 Assessment. SSS. A pre-selected reward will be given out based on this assessment. Returning to reality. Chang Sun opened his eyes again. Hyung, Nim. Baek Jio.O looked at him with a puzzled expression. Has it already been 6 hours? Chang Sun had been so focused on the battle that he hadn't realized how much time had passed. That was pretty fun. Chang Sun had enjoyed stealing the entire power of the beings that he had killed. Besides, the power he had learned from 7 cryptical books of San seemed pretty useful to him. The Baihui factor was a completely different attribute from the Jigwees. That factor alone was enough to change the properties of single E and fire entirely, making it more aggressive. And it seems like Changwees are divided into several classes. Chang Sun recalled. From what he had found out, Changwees were divided into 5 classes. The lowest was the Sa, who made up the majority of Changwees. Next was the Hong Sao, who enjoyed feasting on human flesh. The Gulgak were Changwees capable of using black magic. Then there was the Yael, who seemed to be considered nobles among Changwees. Finally there was the Yukon, the leader of the Changwees. There were only 5 Yukon in the Changwee cave. Even though Chang Sun had now familiarized himself with the SAS and the Hongsals, he would surely be able to absorb more power if he reached the higher ranking Changwees. Jio.O just blinked at him, not knowing what Chang Sun had gone through. The air around him has certainly changed, though Jio.O couldn't tell what the reason was. Worrying if anything had happened to Chang Sun, he tensed up. How long have I been sitting down like this? Chang Sun suddenly spoke up, startling Jio.O and making him pull himself together. Jio.O tilted his head. Pardon. What do you mean? Chang Sun murmured, perplexed. Didn't you just say don't let anyone enter and interfere even if anything happens to you? Jio.O asked. Chang Sun realized, recalling the instructions he had given to Jio.O. But the air around you suddenly changed right after you said it, Jio.O trailed off. Chang Sun's eyes widened a bit. Time barely passed that in reality. He couldn't help but chuckle a little. He had killed so many Changwees that he had raised his level, which rarely happened for him nowadays. Even though he had cleared the dungeon quest with impressive speed, a ridiculously shorter amount of time had passed in reality. This can be very useful. Chang Sun thought, stroking his chin. The curse of 4th cryptical book of San was activated every 20.4 hours, which meant Chang Sun would end up in the same place at the same time tomorrow, and he would go through it the same way. When the curse activated, it would send him into the mission in the same state that he was in at that moment. That meant that if he was injured or weakened somehow in reality, he would enter the mission in that same state. Depending on how he utilized this, he could turn his disadvantage into an advantage. For instance, if I need to catch a breath during a chaotic battle or a place to lay low due to a critical injury. Chang Sun thought. This was a curse, but in some ways it was also a blessing. What kind of curses will the other 6 scrolls hold? Will it be surviving from the Changwee cave, just like this one, or an entirely different mission? He was looking forward to obtaining the power of 4th cryptical book of San, and he couldn't help but wonder what would happen if he acquired the rest of the scrolls. The celestial calamity tiger wonders how you will overcome the cryptical book's curse. There are 7 cryptical books. I am currently under the 4th one's curse. The sword sky tiger has acquired 0.3. That leaves 3 more. I must secure the last 3 books before him. Chang Sun planned. Where should I start? Chang Sun soon realized the answer to finding 4th cryptical book of San, without getting detected by the White Tiger clan. The Hyoff clan remnants. He concluded. The White Tiger clan members were diligently hunting them down to kill them, but wouldn't their leader, who had disappeared into thin air, have some information? I wish I could just find their traces. While Chang Sun organized his thoughts, Jio.O cautiously asked, did something happen by any chance? Shaking his head reassuringly, Chang Sun stood up. No, it's nothing. By the way, Bong. His phone vibrated in his back pocket, interrupting him. Hold on, Chang Sun excused himself when he saw that the caller was Executive Director O, and Jio.O stepped backward as he deactivated the shadow doll. Yes, sir. Chang Sun answered the call. Oh, do you have a moment? Executive Director O asked. Yes, it's okay. I was just training. Chang Sun said. Whoa. Why don't you take a rest? It hasn't been long since the training finished, so don't overwork yourself. Executive Director O gently suggested. I'm all right, all thanks to you. Chang Sun politely replied. You are one smooth talker. I hope other employees train as diligently as you. Those fools only know how to be jealous of your brilliant work and don't even understand how hard you try, even when no one watches. Executive Director O proclaimed, speaking like a true old geezer. Feeling no need to chime in, Chang Sun stayed silent, and it seemed like Executive Director O wasn't expecting an answer because he cut to the chase. Anyways, can you come here if you're not too busy? I want to give you some news, but I would rather tell you in person, and I have something else to give to you, anyway. Executive Director O chuckled, but there was a seriousness in his voice. Thinking something must be going on, Chang Sun's eyes narrowed. Yes, I'll be right there. Where are you right now? I like how you never hesitate. I'm at, Executive Director O called out the address, and Chang Sun repeated it out loud while gesturing at Jio.O to write it down. Chang Sun began packing up his belongings before the call even ended. Yes, I'll see you soon, he said before hanging up. Jio.O asked Chang Sun with a curious look on his face. Did something happen? Well. Chang Sun chuckled. Something did happen. That was all he told Jio.O. I hope the news Executive Director O has for me is High-Off Clan. Related. Chang Sun thought. Although he didn't activate Cruel Tiger's one eye, his right eye shone sharply for some reason. Chapter 79. Star, The Changwei Cave, 4, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Oh, Chang. Sunday. Over here. Executive Director O called out. The directions Executive Director O had given Chang Sun led to a bar that was located in Nanhaian. Dong, not far from Xiangsu. Dong. The bar was dim, and there was no one inside except Executive Director O and the bartender. I'll be back soon, so wait here for a moment. After Chang Sun made Baek Jio.O stand next to the door, he crossed the lobby alone and sat next to Executive Director O. The bartender laid a glass cup filled with ice in front of Chang. Sunday. Who is he? Executive Director O asked, looking at Jio.O. His name is Baek Jio.O, and he worked with me during the training. Chang Sun briefly explained. Executive Director O's eyes sparkled, as he had heard the name before. Jio.O was the most famous rookie among that year's probationers, aside from Chang. Sunday. Executive Director O had heard that Jio.O had contributed substantially to clearing the dungeon with Chang Sun, but they seemed to be closer than he had initially thought. Does he know how to hold his tongue? Executive Director O asked, sipping his drink. I can trust him to have my back. Chang Sun quietly nodded. Are you already trying to recruit people? Executive Director O asked amusedly. I believe the more subordinates, the better. Chang Sun spoke concisely. You aren't entirely wrong. Executive Director O grinned and filled Chang Sun's cup with liquor. But you are wrong about one thing. You need more tools, not subordinates. The first thing Chang Sun noticed was the liquor's pungent smell. A tool you can throw away anytime you want. Executive Director O said calmly, but it sounded like a piece of advice, as well as a warning to Chang. Sunday. Thud. Emptying his glass in one gulp, Executive Director O handed Chang Sun the documents that had been stacked on the barstool beside him. Sun's eyes sparkled as he received the documents, which included his personnel report and the training instructor's detailed comments about him. There were many comments praising Sun, talking about how people were looking forward to seeing his performance in the future, but one specific part caught Sun's eye. "Just like I promised, I assigned you to my department." Executive Director O shrugged. "Is there any mission you would like to assign me?" Sun cut to the chase. Executive Director O filled his empty glass with liquor again, and Sun could see Executive Director O smiling contentedly in its reflection. "The plan for new probationer training will be announced tomorrow. Unlike you, who has already proven himself by clearing the dungeon, the other probationers are basically greenhorns," and Executive Director O began to explain. Sun quietly wondered. "The training will be about chasing down the remnants of the Hyoff clan. Since we have already figured out the location of their hideout, now we only have to clear them away." Executive Director O continued. Sun's eyes shone momentarily as he thought, "I didn't know things would work out this way." No matter how great the Hyoff clan remnants were at escaping, Sun expected that they wouldn't be able to stay off the White Tiger clan's radar forever, and it seemed his expectations were indeed correct. "I might be able to look into matters related to the 7 cryptical books of San. Sun thought. Sun's face lit up with excitement for a moment at his own ambitious plan, but he quickly pulled himself together and returned to his calm expression. Executive Director O didn't notice, too busy sipping on his drink. "The Hyoff clan is a force to be reckoned with. Won't it be dangerous to only send in the probationers? Most raid team members will also join the mission, and the council and the other clan also offered to help. The probationers will only be in charge of the small fries, so it'll be a good chance for them to gain some experience." Executive Director O spoke as if taking care of the remnants was no big deal. However, Sun was certain. There will be many casualties. Demons could never be treated the same as ordinary players. However, you'll be mobilized to the raid team in the executive department. He's getting straight to the point. Sun noticed. This is a given, but many talented players will join the team. Even the board of directors have raised concerns. Still, I pushed hard for you to join the raid team. Why should the clan treat you the same as other mediocre probationers when you have already proven yourself? Executive Director O continued, emptying his glass again. I've included the information about their possible hideout at the end of the document. The mission will be initiated 15 days later, so finish making your preparations by then. Thud. Laying down his glass loudly, Executive Director O stood up, so Sun also rose to his feet. Meanwhile, Song Yu-jun appeared to hand Executive Director O his jacket. I'll tell you the details then, too. Executive Director O said as he put on his jacket. I have a request. Sun said firmly. What is it? Executive Director O turned to Sun, whose eyes reflected Executive Director O's small, yet somehow menacing physique. As a taxi took them both home, Jio.O finally relaxed a bit and let out a long sigh as he spoke, phew. I really thought I might suffocate in there. While Sun and Executive Director O had their conversation that was neither too long nor too short, Jio.O hadn't known what to do. The fearsome air around both of them, even though they were much smaller than him, had been overwhelming. However, Jio.O was happy to know that his young.nim was influential enough to meet the White Tiger clan's second.in.command one. On point one, as if he was Sun himself. In contrast to Jio.O, who was making a fuss, Sun was busy quietly reading through the documents. Just like Executive Director O had said, there were a copy of the report regarding their progress in chasing down the Hyoff clan remnants, and a brief memo about the dungeon that seemed to be their hideout under his personnel report. Jio.O, Sun said.
Jiao.O's face hardened. The air around Chang Sun was heavy, so he quietly replied, yes, Hyung.Nim. Let's not be satisfied with what we have now. You and I still have a long way to go. Chang Sun said nonchalantly. Jiao.O opened his eyes wide because although Chang Sun spoke concisely, he could somehow feel Chang Sun getting out of his well. Therefore Jiao.O beamed and fervently nodded. Yes, Hyung.Nim. He shouted so loudly that the taxi driver was startled. Even Chang Sun was a bit shocked, but he ended up lightly chuckling. It seemed he would continue to laugh a lot in the future if he stayed together with the innocent son of his friend. ******* The 15-day window executive director O had given Chang Sun passed very quickly, and during those days, Chang Sun and Jiao.O's routines had been the same. They left home early every morning and headed to the training range in Seongsu.Dong. Jiao.O focused on controlling shadow play, and in the meanwhile, Chang Sun swoosh focused on conquering the Changwi cave. The remaining time is 3 hours 41 minutes 30 seconds. Current location: Sector 24 of the second floor. I'll put myself in peak condition before I take out the Hyoff clan remnants. Chang Sun planned. In many ways, the Changwi cave was the perfect place for Chang Sun to train and improve himself. He's a monster, a human has shown up again. Close the castle gate. Hurry. What did the search party do? When he showed up, Chang Sun could see the Changwis fall into chaos from afar. They ran away in various directions and comedically bumped against each other and fell down on the ground. It's ironic to hear the real monsters calling that a monster. Anyhow. Chang Sun dumbfoundedly chuckled and squinted. Castle gate, huh? The skill of Viper Eyes has been activated, checking the target that is at a distance. He could see a very high castle, which was surrounded by walls that looked like something out of the Middle Ages, behind the Changwis. There must be a city behind those walls. They actually live like humans. Chang Sun noticed. When he reached the end of the second floor, which was made up of 20.5 sectors, he found out that Changwis weren't actually so different from humans. In the same way that the dungeon message had told him after he had entered the Changwi cave for the first time, each floor of the Changwi cave was comprised of different environments and cities. Chang Sun passed over 10 villages and 2 fairly large cities. They manufactured products and traded with each other. From time to time, they were divided into factions and had territorial disputes. Chang Sun had never seen monsters that were so similar to humans, even in his divine Twilight years. I still don't plan to go easy on them. Chang Sun thought. Of course, he couldn't take pity on them since he had to complete the dungeon quest, and the Changwis also had zero intention of letting Chang Sun live. I'll break the castle gate first. The effect Single Ian Fire has been activated. The title, Jigwee's Phantom Body, has been applied. Whoosh! Sparks flared from Chang Sun's back, and soon, the sparks morphed into wings. At the same time, Chang Sun grabbed the nameless spear, which he had turned into a long spear, and used the Ian Fire to full capacity. This allowed him to fly much faster, and the flames climbed up his arms and covered the nameless spear's head. Using lance charging, Chang Sun turned into a bolt of red lightning and moved towards the castle gate in a flash. The state, Fierce Tiger, has been applied. The Fierce Tiger dispatch is raging. When Chang Sun's thickened, Tiger Kill, mixed together, he truly looked like a tiger running at an impossible speed, wings spread behind his back as he charged toward the gate. No. The Changwi that were guarding the gate urgently yelled as they tried to lock the gate. Boom! Their shrieks were muffled by the sound of the explosion as the castle gate burst into twigs and splinters, just as it was about to be locked. That wasn't the end. Flames from the explosion spread everywhere, shaking the castle walls and covering them with cracks. Boom! Rumble, thud. The Celestial, a good season to hunt, is having fun, applauding you on your refreshingly straightforward attacks. Chang, Sun ran to the center of the city as he broke through the crowds of screaming Changlis that rushed in his direction. For Chang, Sun, these low-ranking Changlis were merely glass dolls that would shatter apart with one small strike. The player, Li Chang, Sun, is dominating. Thud. In the 20.5th sector of the second floor, there was a gigantic city, which could rarely be seen from the other sectors or floors. In the center of the city, on the highest highland, there was the Red Palace, the palace of the second floor's ruler. The entire Red Palace was shaking as the Hongsal King, the strongest Hongsal, angrily shouted, "What? Sector 20.4 has also been conquered. Why can't you do your job? Why did that strange human have to show up now? I have to lie as low as possible. If I get on the wrong side of His Highness right now, I would be killed for sure. A storm is coming again." All the Hongsal subordinates kept their eyes to the floor, unable to face their ruler. They were all Hongsals, the second lowest class of Changlis, who could live like royalty on the first and second floors, but they could never win against the Hongsal King even if they all joined forces. The Hongsal King had overwhelming power and a menacing air around him, so the Gulgaks from the third floor and the Yayals, the noble class Changlis, were reluctant to have conflicts against him, regardless of their own class. "You were the ones who said it's a small commotion that will be taken care of in no time. You told us to focus on conquering the third floor. At least try to make an excuse. You have mouths, don't you?" Still, all the subordinates kept their mouths shut, because just like the Hongsal King said, they had been disregarding the commotion over the past 15 days, complacently thinking that a mere human wouldn't be able to cause too much damage. Frankly, they didn't really care much about any damages to the SAS, the low-ranking Changlis. However, they couldn't have been more wrong. This human invader was so strong that they couldn't do much to resist him. In fact, 40% of the Hongsals were not present, as they had been killed by the human while hurriedly trying to subdue him before the Hongsal King grew more furious. The deceased Hongsals didn't know that their hasty countermeasures would make the Hongsal King even angrier. "The fact that I must achieve great work with these idiots makes me so bitter and resentful." The Hongsal King clenched his teeth. He wasn't originally a citizen of the Changli Cave. In the same way as Chang, Sun, he had been dragged into it by the curse of 7 cryptical books of San, and ended up becoming a Changli after failing to escape. The Hongsal King remained as a Hongsal because his pride as the heir of the prestigious Prisia family in Arcadia stopped him from consuming human flesh. His goal was bigger and greater than the second floor of the Changli Cave. He was going to conquer all 9 floors of the Changli Cave and subdue the 5 Gulhuns to return to his home. After that, he planned to gather up all the remaining starlight of 7 cryptical books of San, and transcend into a deity, which he had wished to become for his entire life. To fulfill his goal, he had kept his nose to the grindstone, conquering the first and second floors. His invasion to the third floor had finally begun, but now there was a sudden unexpected variable messing up his whole plan. He had been steadily driving one of the third floor rulers, Changsal King, into a corner, but now, instead of vanquishing the third floor, his stronghold was on the verge of collapse. Therefore, he had to bite the bullet and deploy his army back to the second floor. The Hongsal King had every reason to be furious with his idiotic subordinates, who had allowed the situation to get to this point. He was also enraged at Chang, Sun, the source of all this havoc, and was filled with the thought of shredding Chang, Sun to pieces, no matter what. Through his tightly closed lips, the sound of the angry Hongsal King gritting his teeth ominously echoed through the palace halls. 1. A region in Korea. 2. The Ra is. This is a Korean phrase that uses a bit of wordplay. There is a word, dot, which means the same as, dot. It usually means, limbs, but sometimes it's used to refer to one subordinate. 3. The Ra was, Hong, means red in Korean. Chapter 80.
Star, The Changwi Cave, 5, you are listening at novelfull.audio. The remaining time is 1 hour 9 minutes 45 seconds. Taking a short break, Chang Sun sat on the top floor of the watchtower, eating a piece of jerky. Your HP is increasing. Your depleted stamina is replenishing. It's too easy. Chang Sun doubtfully thought. Since he was on the second floor, he had believed he would have encountered much more dangerous monsters than on the first floor. Now that he was there, it seemed the only difference was that the second floor was larger. Chang Sun couldn't help but wonder. To be honest, it was strange if he thought about it deeply. Changwis were divided into 5 classes, but even if they were in the same class, each Changwi's combat power was different. They were also divided into factions, so they often competed with each other. Therefore the overall monsters were bound to be stronger than usual, and above all, this was a dungeon, where difficulty levels were supposed to be very different in each sector and floor. In this case, there was normally one reason. The main force was mobilized somewhere else. Chewing on his jerky, Chang Sun smiled bitterly. Should I have interrogated one of them? He looked outside the watchtower's window. As it was the highest place in the dungeon, he had a view of the whole city. It would have been lively before he had arrived, a bustling metropolis under the night sky. Now, it was a ghost town. The collapsed buildings scattered about and the destroyed citadel indicated that there had been an intense battle. On the other side of the city, flames blazed up endlessly. Chang Sun assumed it would only take a day or two for the city to be engulfed in flames unless something else happened. They resisted very fiercely, so it wouldn't have been easy to interrogate them. Chang Sun shrugged. Most Changwis were afraid of Chang Sun, who overwhelmed them with his attacks. In fact, many Changwis had simply fallen into panic and trembled at the sight of him, unable to fight back. However, nobody fled, as if they had to maintain their position no matter what, no, as if they had been ordered to. They are the monsters who have fallen victim to the starlight of the named Hoenn Mama and instinctively hate humans. Where did all these monsters come from? Chang Sun wondered. Then, suddenly, the skill, Beast Senses has been activated, warning you of danger. Chang Sun quickly climbed up to the watchtower's roof. It's too quiet. He thought. The city was unusually calm. Even though Chang Sun was the only one in this phantom city, it was odd that he couldn't even hear the grasshoppers chirping, or the ravens, who would have surely flown down to feast on the many corpses. Tap. Tap. Chang Sun could hear indistinct footsteps, and bleak the wisps lit up amidst the rubble. A considerable amount of troops had already gathered around the watchtower where Chang Sun was standing. I have definitely been staying on my guard. What happened? Chang Sun wondered, analyzing the situation. The Celestial, a good season to hunt, drools upon seeing the monsters who seem to be great at hunting. Chang Sun concluded that they must have possessed a skill that could disturb physical senses. That meant that the monsters here were in a completely different class from the low-ranking Changwis he had been dealing with until now. Finally, something fun. Whoosh! The title, Jigwi's Phantom Body, has been applied. The state, Cruel Tiger, has been applied, blooming the skill, Tiger Kill. Starting from his back, the Ian fire shrouded Chang Sun's body. At the same time, the wisp was formed in his right eye, and, Cruel Tiger's one eye, also activated, increasing the power of, Tiger Kill. It's there. Chang Sun detected the stalking group's leader's possible location and jumped straight down towards it. Kia! He found us. The monster is coming this way. The monsters below him belatedly noticed Chang Sun's intentions and attempted to assume a defensive formation, but they were too late. Boom! Chang Sun released a tremendous amount of the Jigwi's Ian fire as soon as he landed, right in the middle of the group of monsters. The effect, single Ian fire, is blazing up. The firestorm is spreading everywhere.
A dozen Changweis instantly turned to ash, incinerated by the overwhelming heat. Only the monsters that were luckily at a distance from Chang Sun had managed to survive, using their shields to take the brunt of the attack. Of course, they still sustained a substantial amount of damage due to the overheated shields. "Pa! How dare you attack us? I'll kill you. Kia! Oh, they're pretty good." Chang Sun's eyes shone as he watched the Changweis, who didn't lose composure like the others, charging at him after calmly changing their formation. They were indeed different from the low-ranking Changweis that he had dealt with so far, in many ways, the air around them, their way of speaking, their appearance. The low-ranking Changweis looked pale and feeble, while these Changweis had rosy cheeks and small horns next to their temples. They looked similar to dogibis, rather than humans or ghosts. So they're Hongsals. Chang Sun thought. Hong Sao, the intermediate-ranking Changwei. Evolved from Sa, Hongsals are driven to devour humans and become a Golgak. Chang Sun instincts told him that they were the second floor's main force. It seemed they had been temporarily away from the second floor to take care of some business, and had hurriedly returned when they heard about the commotion on their floor. "Well, that's good news for me." Chang Sun smiled coldly. "I'll have more fun with them." They would also give him more experience points. The skill, Wind's Talking Tiger, has been activated. Chang Sun didn't attack them right away. First, he retreated to break their formation and looked for a pathway that led him directly to their leader. "Kill him. Now." Chang Sun darted forward without hesitation when he saw an opportunity. He turned into a bolt of lightning, breaking through dozens of Changweis in formation to reach their leader in the center. With one flash of light, the Changweis that had blocked his way were suddenly reduced to blood and pulp. Boom! Swish! It seemed the leader hadn't considered the possibility that Chang Sun would approach them this quickly, because it hesitated for a moment before it gave out its orders. That short pause determined its future. Clang! Slash! Chang Sun cut off its head in a single stroke using Tiamat's snaggletooth, covered with the condensed Ian fire. Splash! As the leader Changwei's head flew up into the air, his blue blood spattered on the ground and over the other Changwei's heads like rain. Kia! Leader! Our leader is dead. Get him. We should get him. Click. Swish, swish. Chang Sun untangled his whip and attacked the nearby Changweis, aiming for their waists to move them out of his way. The authority perfect marksmanship has been activated. About half a dozen Hongsals were mutilated within seconds. Eliminated the intermediate-ranking Changwei. Hong Sao. Acquired the Changwei Horn. Eliminated the intermediate-ranking Changwei. Hong Sao. Acquired the Ghost Blood. After inflicting significant damage on the Changweis, Chang Sun retreated, satisfied with his work for today. Other Changweis had heard the commotion, and were headed his way. If he acted too greedy, he worried he may end up surrounded and overwhelmed by enemies, so retreating was the right decision. On top of that, he was in a city, and thus, there were many places he could hide. He would have the advantage if he kept the fight in the streets. The skill, Wind's Talking Tiger, has been activated, along with the skill, Concealment. He's gone. He's here somewhere. Find him. Chang Sun went to the back of a building, so the Changweis followed him. However, he suddenly disappeared into darkness, leaving them quite perplexed. It was understandable, since they had been the ones sneaking up on Chang Sun to capture him, but now, they were about to be counterattacked in the same way. Whoosh! The difference was that he could use this tactic more skillfully than them. Ugh! He's here. Here. No. He's to the north. North. Don't be fooled. He's to the southwest. His movements were like that of a ghost. When he appeared on one side, the Changweis would try to surround him,
but by the time they got close, he would be long gone. Then, he would show up on the other side of the city and cause significant damage there. Once they were done forming a defensive perimeter around the area, he would vanish again. Whenever he appeared, he caused firestorms and swung his whip, causing huge damage to the city and the Changlis. In the end, 20% of the intermediate-ranking Changlis were killed in a matter of minutes, and their blockades were completely annihilated. Human. I'll kill you. Ryu, the Hongsao leader who ordered a siege, frowned and roared using its magic. Come out. Human. Let's fight one. On point one if you're truly a warrior too. It seemed Ryu knew that at this rate, its proud elite subordinates were about to be helplessly exterminated, so he tried to lure Chang Sun out in the open. It's a named monster. Chang Sun observed, sitting on a building's roof. Unable to find him, Ryu shouted in comedic fashion as it moved in various directions. Still, the air around it indicated that it was on a whole different level from the Changlis that Chang Sun had dealt with until now. The skill, Beast Senses, has been activated, warning you to not take the opponent lightly. Maybe the air around it shouldn't have been similar to other Changlis. Unlike other Changlis, whose names appeared like low-ranking Changli, Sa, or intermediate-ranking Changli, Hongsao, on the system messages, it had its own special, meaning it had distinguishably higher intelligence and power. Is he the Hongsao king, the ruler of the second floor? Chang Sun wondered. Considering how even the plague spider from the tutorial dungeon didn't have a, Chang Sun deduced that Ryu must have held a high position. What shall I do? Chang Sun quickly glanced at the countdown. The remaining time is 24 minutes 59 seconds. Today's curse was about to be over anyway, so he could continue to use the hit-and-run technique to inflict damage on the Changlis until he ran out of time, then return to reality. However, Chang Sun also thought it wouldn't be a bad idea to test Ryu's ability, since he seemed to be the second floor's ruler. I'll kill it if I can. At the very least, I should be able to come up with a strategy for next time. Chang Sun thought, deciding to fall for Ryu's trick this time. Of course, I can't appear in the middle of the enemies like an idiot. Chang Sun slowly stood up from the roof. The skill, Concealment, has been deactivated. The additional skill, Cruel Tiger's Tiger Kill, has been activated, overwhelming the battlefield. Chang Sun's Tiger Kill spread everywhere. The Changlis could sense it, and they turned their heads to look at the roof where Chang Sun was. There you are. Ryu shouted. Boom. Ryu jumped up in the air, leaving a crater in the ground beneath him and spreading a cloud of dust everywhere. Reaching a tremendous height, Ryu dropped in front of Chang Sun in an arc, rearing back with a giant axe in hand. The named monster Ryu has appeared. Chang Sun swung Tiamat's Snaggletooth in the air, holding it in a reverse grip. Clash. Ryu's axe and Chang Sun's dagger clashed together, creating sparks. Although Ryu opened its eyes wide to receive the strong attack that almost broke its bones, it swung its axe more quickly without any hesitation before it even landed. Ryu's eyes opened wide, as the force of Chang Sun's counter nearly shattered its bones. Still, it swung its axe again immediately, without hesitation, before it even landed on the roof. Clash, clang, clash. Despite being at a disadvantage due to his short dagger, Chang Sun proficiently deflected Ryu's swings and used his whip to attack it in its blind spots. Pa! Ryu instinctively turned sideways, nearly avoiding the whip. Still, the whip managed to reach its target, slicing across Ryu's waist. Through its ripped clothes, the deep bleeding wound was revealed. A sturdy dagger. And you know how to use a whip. No wonder you were able to torture my race. The Celestial, a good season to hunt, pompously says that it's her relic, so it is bound to be good. I definitely have to kill you here no matter what. Or else, you'll continue to be an obstacle to our king while he achieves great work. Ryu declared. Will oh, the wisp lit up in, cruel tiger's one eye, Chang.Sun's right eye. Chang.Sun quietly replied, so you aren't the king, huh? He concluded that he had to raise his expectations about Changli's. Ryu was similar to, or perhaps a bit more powerful than lab director Yang Sang, one, whom Chang.Sun had fought against before. Such a monster rarely existed in the outside world, and it was even loyal. This gave Chang.Sun some notion as to how charismatic the Hongsal king was. Then I'll have to capture you to lure the king out. Chang.Sun smirked. I'll rip out your sly tongue and mouth together. Ryu shouted, gritting its teeth. Ryu, one of the Hongsal king's proud 8 generals, charged forward with its prodigious strength that even the Changlis on the 3rd floor were afraid of. The roof they were standing on collapsed, unable to withstand both Ryu and Chang.Sun's energy. Swoosh! Boom, boom, boom. With the loud sound of explosions, a big cloud of dust formed, making the nearby Changlis unable to see the result of the battle. What? What happened? Still, it's Ryu.Nim. Yes, Ryu.Nim will retaliate against that arrogant human, the Changlis chattered because they weren't sure how the fight had turned out, but they were blindly certain that Ryu had won, since the Ryu they knew would never lose to anyone. Slash! Splash! They heard the ominous sound of a blade. Then, a severed head broke through the dust cloud, flying through the air. The Changlis screamed when they saw whose head it was. Ryu.Nim. How? A situation they could not comprehend was unfolding before their very eyes. They had fully expected to see the human's head, not Ryu's. Thud. The loud, dull sound of Ryu's headless body helplessly falling down reverberated through the dust cloud. The remaining time is 20 minutes and 19 seconds. As the dust settled, Chang.Sun was revealed, smiling coldly at the Changlis down below. Is there anyone else?